Sheriff Logan felt a little guilty for not caring much about why Ash had called him. Even though he had played a role, however indirectly, in the downfall of Benedict and his family, his main concern was that this latest incident provided the perfect excuse to return to Helena. He was still recovering from that bachelorette party. Thankfully, his job required him to stay in shape because the night had taken him back in time, to when he was a young man and Helena was the unattainable girl every boy longed for but couldn't have. The realization that he now had a real chance with her felt almost unreal. When she had kissed him, he lost himself. It wasn't the restrained, hesitant kiss she had always given him in the past, though back then even that had been enough. She'd always been a tease, pushing him to the edge of frustration. But this kiss? This was different, and he had surrendered to it completely. The night was supposed to be simple, just the two of them eating, talking, reminiscing. He had thought about how to steer the conversation away from his late wife, afraid of revealing that their marriage hadn't been the fairy tale everyone assumed. He had wanted to protect her memory, to keep up the illusion. But he had also feared that Helena, as she always did, would make him forget his careful restraint and pull the truth out of him. She had a way of making him open up about his emotions, his ambitions, things he never discussed with anyone, not even his closest friends. But they hadn't even had time to waste on small talk. Oh, they had talked, but not in the way he had planned. When she kissed him, he surprised himself by lifting her effortlessly. He remembered thinking how light she felt in his arms. Then, just as quickly, another memory surfaced. One from years ago when he had accidentally walked in on her at her brother's clinic as she checked her weight. She had been mortified that he had seen the number, even though it was perfectly fine. The past and present blurred together as he carried her into the enclosure. Now that he finally had her in his arms, he didn't want to let go. He placed her on the massage bench, settling between her thighs as she cupped his face, pulling him in for another kiss. "I find this terribly enjoyable," she teased. Logan chuckled. In that moment, they weren't two people who had lived separate lives for years. The memories of their countless chance encounters flashed through his mind, making it feel like no time had passed at all. Here in private, she wasn't the esteemed Owen and Liam's grandaunt. She was simply Helena, the girl who had always captivated him. "I find this oddly enjoyable too, Helena," he murmured, gazing into her luminous eyes before pressing his lips to hers again. "You danced beautifully," she whispered as he traced her lips with his own. "You're far too generous with your compliments," he replied, deepening the kiss as he pressed closer, making her dress ride up her thighs. When he trailed his lips from her mouth to the soft curve of her throat, he inhaled deeply and whispered, "You still smell the same, like night-blooming jasmine, warm skin, and the slightest hint of vanilla." He felt her lean back as if giving him space to venture lower, and he did, closing his mouth over her, capturing the peak of her chest through the fabric of her dress. She trembled, his name escaping her lips as her fingers combed gently through his hair. Encouraged, Logan continued his descent, trailing lower and lower until she was on her back, his hands cradling her hips as he made a meal of her. When her body tensed and shuddered with release, he pulled her upright, settling her on the edge of the bench as he became even more intimate with her. Their eyes locked, bodies trembling, breaths uneven. When Helena could no longer keep her eyes open, lost in the pleasure, she buried her face in the crook of his neck and whispered, "If I had known this was what I'd been missing, I would have made you do this sooner." Logan nearly laughed, but the sound died in his throat when she took his earlobe between her lips and suckled, making him jerk in her arms. She moaned his name and he quickened his rhythm, pushing them both to the edge again. Afterward, he lay with her on the Persian rug in disbelief, discreetly pinching himself as if to wake from the blissful haze. He had just had Helena Everly. He almost glanced over his shoulder, half expecting her brother to be standing there, ready to make good on all the threats he'd once made to any boy foolish enough to mess with his sister. To his shame, Logan admitted to himself that this had been the best intimacy he had ever experienced. The thought of letting her go again felt gut-wrenching. She teased him over dinner, making him feel both embarrassed and flustered when she compared his gentlemanly demeanor to the way he had just taken her. The only way he had managed to shut her up was by kissing her, again and again. Eventually, he asked about her life in New York, and while he was happy that she was happy, he couldn't ignore the faint sadness that crept in. He wasn't part of that life, and it would be unfair to expect her to leave it just to be with him. "Maybe I can come see you in New York one of these days," he had said, hoping, praying that she wanted to see him again. "You're going to love it," she had replied with a grin. "Let me warn you, though, you'll never want to come back." Then she had kissed him, and Logan had pulled her close, guiding her to straddle him. He didn't remember when they had finally fallen asleep, but waking up hours later with her nestled in his arms, both of them bare, felt like a goal he wanted to achieve every day for the rest of his life. But reality came calling. He had to leave, and as much as he had tried to clean up their little sanctuary like a crime scene, ensuring Andrew's men wouldn't know just how thoroughly they had broken the rules, the suspicious glances they gave him as he left made it clear that perhaps he hadn't been thorough enough. He had to act indifferent, had to keep his distance, even when all he wanted to do was pull her into his arms one last time. He knew it had only been a few hours since he left the Everly Ranch, yet he already couldn't wait to see her again. Knowing Andrew would insist on coming to Graham's house, Logan quickly placed a call to him. The line was busy, but that didn't stop him. He kept calling until Andrew finally picked up. "Sheriff Logan, I know why you're calling. I'm leaving the ranch now to join you at Graham's house. My people acted purely in self-defense," Andrew said. "Oh, I know. In fact, I'm just getting to Graham's house now. How about you don't bother coming over? I'll let them all leave as soon as I get inside," Logan replied. "Okay," Andrew responded, his hesitation evident. Not wanting to give him room to argue, Logan added, "I'll come by later to give you a full report." Then he ended the call. When Logan stepped inside Justin Graham's house and spotted little Tristan, a surge of anger ran through him. The boy had already been through enough. He shouldn't have to face this kind of violence again. "Sheriff Logan," Tristan called, waving tiredly as the older man approached. "You okay, buddy?" Logan asked, a hint of concern in his voice. Tristan nodded. "Yeah, Aunt Jaden and Uncle Ash saved me and my dad," he said. "Good," Logan replied. "I'm sure you're tired and ready to get back to Owen and Liam, so I'm sending you and your dad home with your aunt and uncle now." Tristan nodded in agreement. Justin shook Logan's hand, thanked him for coming, and led him to his study. As Logan took in the wreckage, the shattered furniture, the shotgun lying discarded on the floor, he gave a satisfied nod. "You can take Tristan out of here. I'll handle the rest," Logan said. "Don't you need me for a statement?" Justin asked, brows furrowed. "You can stop by the station tomorrow to give one, or write it down when you get back to the ranch. I'll pick it up when I come by later," Logan replied. Justin nodded, satisfied. "Thank you, Sheriff Logan." "This scene makes it look like you're damn lucky," Logan remarked, surveying the damage. "You don't know the half of it. He was hell-bent on killing me just for associating with Ethan and Nate," Justin said, making Logan frown. That was important information. By that logic, Logan himself could be considered guilty by association with the Blackwoods and Hawthorns. If Diana and her remaining degenerates were targeting anyone tied to them, he might be next. "Tell me exactly what he said," Logan prompted, unwilling to miss a single detail. Meanwhile, earlier at the Everly Ranch upstairs in Liam and Owen's room, Jake helped carry Liam inside and over to his bed, a sleek, futuristic bunk bed that looked like something out of a sci-fi movie. He carefully laid Liam down on the lower bed, a circular sleeping pod with blue bedding accented by orange and white pillows. The pod was enclosed within a curved frame, creating a cozy nook. Built-in shelves lined the interior walls, displaying framed pictures of the triplets, Landon, Mason, and Esme, as well as Owen, Liam, and their mum and dad. There was also a group photo of Andrew, Jake, Charles, Aidan, Ash, and 15 more of the Hawthorne bodyguards. Jake smiled at the sight of it. Other shelves held decorative figurines and books. Soft fairy lights illuminated the space, casting a warm glow. A textured blanket was draped over the bed, and Jake pulled it up to cover Liam from the chest down. "Thank you, Jake," Arya said softly as he stepped back, making way for Dr. Hawthorne, Evangeline, and Anita. "Thank you, Jake," Nathaniel added as he set Owen down on his feet. No problem, boss, Jake replied in a low voice, moving to stand beside Nathaniel. Owen climbed onto the bed, sitting near Liam's feet while their mum, Aunt Anita, and Evangeline administered his medication. Jake's gaze wandered over the rest of the elaborate bunk bed setup. To the right, a set of curved white stairs with built-in lighting led to the upper level. The top bunk was positioned against a large window that framed the snowy landscape outside. More built-in shelves, similar to the ones below, housed books and small decorative items. A blanket was neatly folded at the foot of the bed. Integrated lighting in the ceiling, walls, and stairs bathed the entire space in a warm, ambient glow. A small smile played on Jake's lips as he imagined recreating something similar for his son, Eli. He couldn't wait for him to be born. Nathaniel's chuckle pulled him from his thoughts just as Liam spoke up. If I die, Owen can have my pet robot, but he can't have my custom-made Jordans. I designed them myself, and Nike made them just for me. We have to save those for my tube baby. Evangeline laughed. My goodness, the things you say, Liam, she said as she gently rubbed the injection site on his upper arm, where she had administered the intramuscular shot. Owen groaned. You have an ordinary cold, Liam. Stop being dramatic, he scolded, though Jake could hear the slight unease in his voice. He didn't find Liam's joke about dying funny. Stop scaring your brother, Liam, Arya chided softly. Jake laughed when the little rascal wiggled his brows mischievously. He's definitely feeling better after that injection, Anita teased, giving Liam's nose a playful tug. Liam grinned unabashedly. Nathaniel chuckled, feeling relieved that his boy was acting himself again. A gentle knock on the door drew their attention as Anna peeked inside before stepping in with Alex, Isla, and Ethan. How's my little Liam? Anna cooed as she approached the bed. Aunt Anna, phew, I can tell you right now I saw the light, Liam replied dramatically. Anna gasped in mock horror before bursting into giggles. Owen groaned, covering his face. Everyone laughed. He's definitely feeling better, the little imp, Alex said as he stepped closer, reaching out to ruffle Liam's hair. When Liam turned to look at him with a grin, Isla caught his gaze, smiled, and mouthed, "Get well soon." Liam nodded in understanding. The only light you're going to see, my boy, is the one right above your bed, Arya teased, giving him a playful smack on the arm. Liam giggled. She leaned forward, pressing a kiss on his cheek, and he wrapped his small arms around her neck. Love you, my knight, Arya murmured. Love you, Mum, Liam said before locking eyes with his dad. He mouthed, You're my favorite, though. Nathaniel shook with laughter before signing back to him. Love you loads. Liam grinned. As his eyelids grew heavy, Evangeline ushered everyone out and they trickled out of the room. Nathaniel paused at the entrance when he noticed Owen hadn't moved from his spot. Just as he was about to say something, Arya placed a hand over his chest and whispered, Nothing is making him move from there until Liam wakes up. Nathaniel's chest tightened at the weight of her words. When Arya interlaced her fingers with his and gently tugged him away, he had no choice but to close the door behind them. Silently, he promised himself he'd give Owen a few minutes, then come back to check on him. Downstairs in the living room, Andrew was waiting. Noticing Andrew's pointed look directed at him and Ethan, Nathaniel stepped away from Arya to join them. Did something happen? Ethan asked Andrew before Nathaniel could. Andrew shifted his gaze between Nathaniel and Ethan. He wanted to report that Ian's plan was unfolding as expected, even though the lunatics had targeted the wrong people, but he knew he couldn't say that in front of Ethan. You're not going to believe this, Andrew began. Believe what? Ethan asked warily. 2 of your stepbrothers, Blackwood, attacked Justin, Andrew said in a low voice. What? Ethan exclaimed, his shock evident. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. Tristan was with him. Luckily, so was Jaden. Justin had gone out to pick up a few things, and Jaden insisted he shouldn't be alone because of the Andersons. And because of his connection to you, Ethan. Turns out she was right. Benedict and one of his brothers ambushed him, calling him a traitor for being friends with Blackwood here, Andrew explained. Wait, you're telling me Justin was attacked just for associating with me? Ethan repeated, incredulity lacing his words. Yes, and for being part of our group, Andrew confirmed. "This is insane. These people need to be stopped," Ethan growled under his breath. "How did Jaden handle it?" Nathaniel asked, speaking for the first time. She warned Ash that she might need backup before they left and alerted him the moment she spotted Benedict's truck tailing them. Ash followed Benedict, and it was a good thing he did. Otherwise, either Jaden or Justin would be dead right now, Andrew continued, detailing how Jaden was also ambushed and how Ash stepped in. "Oh my God," Ethan breathed, horrified, when he learned that 2 of Diana's sons were dead. "So 2 down, 2 to go," Nathaniel murmured. Andrew nodded. "Diana is going to be ruthless," Ethan said, his tone dark with foreboding. "We'll be ready," Nathaniel replied. "I gave them every opportunity to leave town and leave us alone. They refused. Whatever happens now is on them," he added, his voice devoid of emotion. "God, I'm just relieved Justin and Tristan had Jaden and Ash watching their backs. I'd never forgive myself if something happened to them just because they happened to breathe the same air as me. Can you believe these fucking lunatics?" Ethan growled, visibly on edge. Then, turning to leave, he added, "I'm going to tell Ian." Andrew and Nathaniel shifted to stand side by side, watching as Ethan left the living room. Nathaniel slipped his hands into his trouser pockets. "I suppose this would be a good time for Ian to tell his son this was his plan all along," Andrew muttered, loud enough for Nathaniel to hear. "I seriously doubt he will," Nathaniel replied just as quietly. "Ian has no problem orchestrating something like this, but Ethan isn't as morally bankrupt. Even if it made sense that this was the best way to claim self-defense and eliminate his enemies, Ian playing God would set Ethan off, because it's exactly what he's done to him and his mother for as long as he can remember." Andrew nodded. "I'm going to need all hands on deck for the carnival. We're walking a tightrope here, and it's not just Ethan's life at stake." "That would be wise," Nathaniel agreed. Andrew exhaled. "How's Liam, boss?" Aidan asked as he joined them, coming to stand on Nathaniel's other side. "He's resting. Dr. Hart took care of him," Nathaniel replied, a fond smile crossing his face as he recalled Liam's antics. "I already miss him. That gathering is way too peaceful," Andrew remarked, gesturing toward the women sitting by the fire. Nathaniel and Aidan chuckled. "What about Owen? Is he with his big mama and the triplets?" Aidan asked with interest. "Believe it or not, he's watching over Liam. Arya said it's something he does," Nathaniel said, his deep voice softening at the thought. "That's really cool," Aidan said. "I like that they're that close. At the end of the day, they have to have each other's backs. We're not going to live forever," Andrew said, drawing Nathaniel and Aidan's attention. When Andrew caught them both watching him, he shrugged and added, "It's the truth." Aidan frowned. Nathaniel smirked. "Slow down, Grandpa. You're not allowed to talk about death until you're at least 90 and decrepit," he quipped, making the men laugh. Meanwhile, back at Justin Graham's house, Sheriff Logan escorted Jaden, Ash, and Justin, who was carrying Tristan, out of the house, watching as they entered their cars and drove out of the compound. Once they were gone, he made his way over to Benedict's car, which was parked not far from the house. Finding it unoccupied, he pulled out his radio and called dispatch. "This is Sheriff Logan. Send 2 deputies to my location. I have an abandoned vehicle belonging to the assailants parked outside the residence. It needs to be impounded as evidence," he instructed. As the dispatcher acknowledged his request, he continued. "Also, notify the coroner's office. I need a forensic team here ASAP. We've got 2 bodies that need to be processed and removed. Move quickly, people." Ending the call, Logan re-entered the house alone. Slipping on a pair of nitrile gloves, he began his preliminary investigation. Shortly after, his team arrived. The deputies secured the perimeter while crime scene technicians documented the scene. They marked and measured the positions of the bodies, took photographs from multiple angles, and carefully bagged additional evidence, including the weapons used. Blood spatter patterns and signs of struggle in the Home Office were noted, catalogued, and photographed. Each step followed standard procedure, ensuring nothing was overlooked. After nearly 4 hours, the forensic team completed their work. The bodies were placed in body bags and transported to the coroner's van. The crime scene was sealed off with police tape, and the house was officially logged as an active investigation site. As Sheriff Logan stepped outside, his team was finishing their cleanup. A small group of neighbors had gathered at a distance, watching the proceedings with curiosity and concern. Logan gave a nod to a few who acknowledged him before making his way to his patrol car. It was just past 4 in the evening and the sky was already darkening. He had barely settled into the driver's seat when his radio crackled to life. "Sheriff, we've got a domestic disturbance reported up in the mountains," dispatch informed him. Logan muttered a curse under his breath and reached for the ignition. "Copy that. En route now," he responded, shifting the car into gear and pulling away. Early on at the Everly Ranch, Nathaniel checked his watch, noting that it had been 2 hours since Liam's initial treatment. Realizing he hadn't seen Owen outside since then, he excused himself from the gathering and headed upstairs. He had just reached the landing when Justin entered the house, carrying Tristan. Justin had first gone to clean up and change his clothes before making his way to the main house. As he stepped inside, Andrew intercepted him. "How are you holding up?" Andrew asked. "I'm fine, thanks to Jaden and Ash. You were right to assign her to us. I think I'd be dead if not for her," Justin admitted. Andrew exhaled in resignation, then met Tristan's gaze and held out a fist. Tristan, watching him, mimicked the gesture with a tired smile. "You're a brave kid, you know that?" Andrew said. Tristan nodded with a grin, making Justin chuckle. "You should let him eat and get some rest," Andrew advised. "I intend to. He needs his medication too," Justin replied. "I'll have Anita take care of that," Andrew said. "Thanks, man," Justin said with a nod of appreciation. "Uncle Andrew, how is Liam doing? And where is Owen?" Tristan asked softly. "Liam is resting and Owen is with him reading," Andrew replied with a warm smile. "Sounds like the perfect time to rest, huh?" Justin added. Tristan nodded in agreement. Back in town, it wasn't until 6 p.m. that Sheriff Logan finally had a moment to head toward the Everly Ranch. He was on edge, not just because he knew he might also be a target, but also because he wanted to time his visit appropriately. Early enough to be respectful, yet not so conspicuous as to reveal just how far things had gone between him and Helena at the bachelorette party. As he approached a T-junction leading to the road that wound its way toward the Everly Ranch, a truck suddenly barreled into the intersection, cutting him off. Logan slammed his foot on the brake, his tires screeching against the asphalt as his patrol car lurched forward before stopping just inches from the truck's grill. "Son of a..." he cursed, but the words caught in his throat as the driver's window of the truck rolled down. Behind the wheel sat Diana, her face a mask of cold fury. Seated in the back seat from her was her youngest son, who leveled a shotgun directly at him. Logan's self-preservation instincts kicked in. In one fluid motion, he threw the car into reverse, just as the shotgun blast rang out. The pellets shattered his side mirror, spraying glass across his uniform, but his ballistic windshield held. He yanked the wheel, angling the vehicle to maneuver out of their line of fire. Before he could complete the turn, the truck surged forward and slammed into his front end, the impact sending a violent jolt through his body. Tires screeched as his patrol car was shoved sideways, metal groaning as it skidded toward the edge of a steep embankment. Pinned, Logan struggled against the force of the collision, his grip tightening on the wheel. The truck revved again, pressing his car dangerously close to the drop. Through the truck's open window, Diana leaned out, her eyes burning with vengeance. "Before you die, I want you to look at me, you bastard," she spat, "and know that it was me who took your miserable life." "Ha! I've always known you're a deeply disturbed bitch. It's a no-brainer you passed it to your boys," Logan snarled in anger. Diana let out a furious roar, pressing down harder on the accelerator. The engine roared in response, and the acrid stench of burning rubber filled the cold air. Logan fought against the weight of the truck pinning his patrol car. The road beneath his tires was slick with fresh snowfall, making traction nearly impossible. His engine groaned in protest as he jammed the gear shift, reversing and wrenching the wheel violently to the left. The tires spun for a moment before finally gripping, and with one final thrust, he broke free from the truck's hold. The sudden release sent his vehicle fishtailing across the icy road. Gritting his teeth, he tried to regain control, his hands locked onto the wheel as he accelerated to put distance between himself and Diana. But just as he thought he might have a chance, a deafening gunshot rang out. The bullet tore through the trunk, punching through metal and fabric before ripping into his side, just below his ribs. A fiery explosion of pain erupted through his body. His breath hitched, his vision momentarily blurring. His grip faltered. The car veered violently, the tires skidding on the frozen asphalt. The front end clipped a buried rock, launching the vehicle airborne. For a split second, time stretched. Cold air rushed in, snowflakes suspended mid-air, blood warm against his side. Then, gravity took hold. The patrol car flipped. Once. Twice. On the third rotation, it slammed roof first into the frozen earth, with a deafening crunch of metal and shattering glass. Logan's head snapped forward, pain lancing through his neck as the airbags deployed. The world blurred in flashes of white and crimson. Everything settled. Silence ensued, except for his ragged breathing. Blood dripped from a gash on his forehead, trickling down to his lips. His body was pinned, trapped in the crushed frame of his car. Pain radiated from his side where the bullet had lodged deep. Then he heard it, boots crunching against the snow, getting closer. His enemies were coming. The acrid scent of leaking gasoline filled his nostrils, thick and suffocating. Somewhere behind him, the engine sputtered weakly, its exposed components groaning under the weight of the wreckage. Logan's pulse hammered. He needed to move, now, before the next bullet finished the job. Meanwhile, at the Everly Ranch gate, Seth, Stephen, Adam, and Gabriel were getting into their patrol vehicles in pairs to scout the perimeter, as they had done since arriving at Sylvan Ridge. Just as they were about to depart, the sharp crack of multiple gunshots rang out in the distance, echoing through the cold air. Seth, sitting in the driver's seat of the lead truck, exchanged a tense glance with Adam, who was in the passenger seat, before starting the engine. Adam immediately drew his firearm. At the gate, the guards scrambled to open it as Seth and Adam accelerated toward them, with Stephen and Gabriel not too far behind. By the time they reached the entrance, the gate was already open, and they sped off the ranch grounds onto the road. About 5 minutes later, they reached an intersection and spotted the tail lights of a truck just ahead, right next to a wrecked Jeep engulfed in flames. "Oh my God, isn't that Sheriff Logan's car?" Seth exclaimed in dismay. A minute earlier, Logan sucked in a shallow breath, clenched his teeth, and reached for his holster. His fingers wrapped around the handle of his hunting knife, pressing the side button to release it from its sheath. The blade came free, and he immediately sliced through the seatbelt, restraining him. With no time to hesitate, he forced himself through the shattered side window. The instant he emerged, gunfire erupted. Bullets tore through the air around him. A round must have hit the gas tank. An explosion roared behind him, flames engulfing the wreckage. Logan didn't stop to think. He dove forward as shots kept coming, his body reacting in pure survival instinct. He had no idea if any bullets had struck him, but adrenaline overpowered the pain. He threw himself toward the cliff's edge, rolling blindly. He shut his eyes, bracing for whatever lay below. Snow broke his fall as his body slammed into the underbrush, sinking deep into the icy cushion. The impact jolted through his body, but he didn't stay down. He forced himself up and scrambled out of sight, slipping beneath the cover of a rocky outcrop. His pulse pounded in his ears, breaths ragged and uneven. Then came more gunfire, bullets kicking up powdery bursts of snow as they rained down. Logan flattened himself against the ground, squeezing deeper into the ditch. His gaze flickered downward, catching sight of dark crimson droplets staining the snow. A sharp, searing pain flared in his side, and now another fresh wound burned in his left thigh. They had hit him again while he was rolling. He exhaled through gritted teeth. They weren't good shots. Otherwise, he'd already be dead. "Damn it!" Diana's voice rang out from above. "You think he got away?" her son asked. "He's not getting away." Her voice was cold, resolute. "Let's go hunting." Logan's grip tightened around his gun. He was cornered, wounded, and outnumbered. But if they came after him, he'd make sure at least one of them went down with him. Then Diana swore again. An engine rumbled in the distance. Logan tensed, listening. More vehicles. "We need to go! It's those meddling bastards!" she snapped. "Move now!" Their footsteps pounded away, followed by the screech of tires as they sped off. Moments later, a second engine rumbled in, deeper, more powerful. "Was he in there?" a voice barked. Logan's breath caught. He knew that voice. It was Seth. A tightness gripped his chest. Nathaniel Hawthorne's men. They had come for him. They had saved him, if he could survive his wounds. With the last of his strength, he raised his gun and fired 3 times into the air. Silence ensued. Then a figure dropped into the ditch, gun and knife drawn. "Shit! It's Logan! He's alive!" It was Adam. Unconsciousness loomed, but Logan forced himself to stay awake. He had to tell them who had done this. Adam moved fast. "Hold on, Sheriff. We're getting you out." Logan heard Seth yell, "Alert, Rowan!" just as Adam grabbed him, pulling him free from the hole he'd crawled into. "It's Diana Blackwood," Logan forced out, his voice strained. "And her last boy, Timothy Blackwood." Adam cursed under his breath. Logan's vision blurred, his body wavered. No, stay with me, Sheriff. You don't want Ms. Everly crying over you, right?" A faint smirk ghosted across Logan's lips. "Well played, kid," he muttered weakly. Adam let out a short laugh, tightening his grip. Logan finally let the darkness take him. "He's out cold," Adam called out to Seth, who tossed down a rope. Adam looped it under Sheriff Logan's arms like a lasso, securing him before lifting him. Seth and Gabriel hauled him up together, their grip firm as they worked in sync. Once Logan was on solid ground, Seth kept him upright, while Gabriel quickly removed the rope. Stephen arrived with a stretcher, and they carefully laid the sheriff onto it. Without wasting time, Seth and Gabriel carried him to their Jeep, where Stephen had already opened the backseat door. Adam climbed out of the ditch and joined them. "I got the plate number of the truck they used. We'll get them," Stephen said as they loaded Logan inside. "Rowan and Williams are on standby," he added before shutting the back door. The 4 men quickly got into their vehicle, started the engine, and sped toward the ranch. Meanwhile, Rowan was in the outdoor gazebo with William, Andrew, Justin, Tom, Charles, Aidan, and Jake when his phone rang. He answered, and the patrol team reported Sheriff Logan's attack. His expression darkened as he stood up, processing the news. First Justin, now the sheriff. Did these people have any limits? He had been considering heading out alone to visit Everly Hospital to see Grace Hamilton, but now a new concern gripped him. What if they came after him too? Worse, what if they targeted the Everly Hospital and attacked their people? "We'll be ready," he said in response before ending the call. Turning to Williams, he announced, "We have an emergency. The Blackwoods attacked Sheriff Logan. Multiple gunshot wounds and burns." "Oh, what?" Aidan exclaimed as the men all rose to their feet. His eyes automatically darted towards the house. Even from where they sat, he could see through the glass wall, where the women were gathered near the living room fire. He hated how this was about to bring them despair. He hoped the older man would pull through, but he was going to make sure those bastards didn't get away with it. "Do you think they might go after Fields Bennett or Grace Hamilton next?" Rowan asked, his concern evident. "Lewis is at the clinic," Andrew replied, his anger simmering. "Unless they have a death wish, I don't think they'd try that." He clenched his jaw. Damn it, Logan was coming here to give us a report on Justin's case. Andrew couldn't help feeling partly responsible. He thought that if he had gone to join the man, this might not have happened. "I can't believe they attacked the sheriff," Justin muttered, still in shock. "Being driven by the feeling of having nothing to lose is dangerous," Tom said. "They're like an exposed wire now. Anyone who isn't careful could get burned." "Well, let's hope he pulls through," Jake added. "Otherwise, that exposed wire is about to burn itself out." His voice carried an edge of annoyance. "Let's get you to the infirmary," Andrew said. Charles, Jake, and Aidan took the lead. Rowan and Williams followed, with Tom and Justin not too far behind. Andrew turned and made his way toward the house. Meanwhile, Nathaniel had finally convinced Owen to step away from his constant watch over Liam. He led the boy to the kitchen for a quick treat before carrying him back into the living room. As he entered, the sound of 2 trucks speeding past the building caught his attention. His expression tightened. He gently set Owen down beside Arya, drawing her gaze. She looked between him and the boy before instinctively pulling Owen closer. Nathaniel moved across the room to meet Andrew, his eyes searching the man's face. "What happened?" Nathaniel asked, a sense of foreboding settling over him. "Diana and her son attacked Sheriff Logan. It sounds critical, boss," Andrew reported. "What?" Nathaniel exclaimed, stunned. "They attacked the sheriff? A police officer? Damn, that woman is completely unhinged. I won't lie, I had thought she'd just skipped town." "I'm afraid I underestimated them. I think Logan did too," Andrew admitted. "Ash and Jaden wanted to go after them, but I didn't give the order because I thought they had enough sense to stay out of Benedict's scheming. I was wrong," Andrew said in a low, hushed tone, his voice tense with anger. "I assumed Benedict was the one pulling the strings, but it might just be Diana. And now, we may have no choice but to put them down like rabid dogs, since that's what they've chosen to be." "Yeah, well, we've given them more than enough chances for redemption, but they don't want it," Nathaniel said grimly. "They poisoned Ian, they tried to kill Ethan. Justin and Jaden barely escaped. I have no doubt they would have silenced Tristan if they had succeeded, and now they've nearly killed Sheriff Logan." His voice trailed off, ice settling into his tone. "I don't want us to take any more chances, especially with the carnival coming up," Nathaniel continued. "Send Ash, Lewis, Jake, and Aiden after them. I want them gone." "Yes, boss," Andrew responded, satisfaction evident in his voice. "Will Rowan need Arya?" Nathaniel asked, turning toward the women. "I think it's best to let her know so she can be on standby," Andrew replied. Nathaniel exhaled sharply, frustration evident. "Damn it," he muttered. "We have to tell Miss Everly." Andrew knew exactly what Nathaniel meant. Miss Everly had seemed livelier lately, as if, beyond her grandniece and nephews, she had found a new reason to smile. But now, there was a real possibility that happiness could be extinguished forever. "Let's tell Dr. Hawthorne and Anita first. Once they're done with Logan, we can inform Miss Everly," Andrew suggested. Nathaniel agreed without hesitation. Pulling out his phone, Nathaniel called Arya. His eyes remained on her as the phone rang. When she glanced in his direction after seeing the caller ID, he motioned for her to come over. Arya stood, excused herself, and crossed the room to join them. The way the two men stood there in tense silence made her uneasy. "You need to go with Andrew to the infirmary now, babe," Nathaniel said. Arya's heart skipped a beat. Without a word, Andrew turned and she quickly followed him. As soon as they stepped outside, she asked, "Who is it?" "Logan. Multiple gunshot wounds and burns," Andrew answered. "Oh dear Lord," Arya whispered, then broke into a jog. Nathaniel remained where Andrew had left him, trying to figure out a way to pull Anita away from the gathering without raising Miss Everly's suspicion. He wasn't sure what Owen had told her, but he noticed the older woman glance in his direction before looking out through the glass wall. Nathaniel tensed, hoping she hadn't seen Arya leave. Anita caught sight of Nathaniel, then stood up and walked toward him. He could see Miss Everly watching them, her brows furrowed with concern. He wondered if her connection to Logan ran deeper than they had assumed, if she could sense something was wrong, just as he knew he would if it were Arya. "Where is Arya running to?" Anita asked, making Nathaniel tense further. "There's an emergency at the infirmary, Anita. Miss Everly can't know yet," he said quietly. Anita's eyes widened as she searched his face for answers. "Go join them," Nathaniel urged firmly. Swallowing hard, Anita nodded and hurried outside. Nathaniel knew Miss Everly would come to him next, but it took her a moment. He hoped that small delay would make a difference in whatever was unfolding at the infirmary. When she finally stood, leaving Owen with Anna and Evangeline, she crossed the room toward him. Nathaniel, pretending to be occupied with a text message, looked up to meet her gaze. Worry clouded her expression as she studied him. He tried to smile but couldn't. He knew she could feel it. Something was wrong. "You know, when my brother died, even before anyone told me, I felt it to my core," she said, her voice steady but strained. "That something terrible had happened, that I had lost someone dear to me. I felt this ache in my chest then, and I feel it now. Arya is fine. Her children are fine. You are fine. Anita is fine. The only person not here is Patrick. Please tell me he isn't dead." Nathaniel pulled her into a brief hug before guiding her toward the exit. "He won't be," he said in a low, quiet voice, "because he has the very best doctors attending to him." Helena Everly nodded, fighting to stay strong as she let out a shaky breath. "What happened to him?" she asked in a small voice. "I would rather not say," Nathaniel replied, unwilling to lie to her or distress her with the details. "Nate!" Ethan called from the entrance to the living room as he jogged to join them. "What's going on?" he asked, trying to gauge where Nathaniel was heading with Arya's aunt. "You'll see, Ethan. We are heading to the infirmary," Nathaniel replied. That response sent a chill through Ethan. His steps faltered as he tried to piece the puzzle together. It was obvious that Nathaniel didn't want to say anything in front of Miss Everly. But why? Why would he be so secretive? He did a quick mental count, running through the possibilities of who might be in the infirmary and significant to Miss Everly. "Oh, God, no." Ethan groaned internally as it clicked. He wanted to rush to the infirmary and leave Nathaniel with Miss Everly, but he didn't want to alarm her. So, he endured the tense walk toward the cottage. However, as they neared their destination and Nathaniel spotted his men waiting outside, he cast Miss Everly a sidelong glance and asked, "It almost feels like you care about him a lot. So why aren't you two together?" Miss Everly let out a shaky breath. "I know what you're doing, Nate," she replied. "Humor me," Nathaniel urged, knowing they both needed the distraction. As Nathaniel worked at distracting Arya's aunt, Ethan left them, striding ahead to join the other men. He needed to know how the older man was doing, what exactly was wrong, and the full extent of his injuries. He came to a halt beside Adam when he spotted Andrew. He had never seen the older man look so unsettled. He was pacing near the entrance like a caged animal. "Please tell me Sheriff Logan has a chance," Ethan said in a hushed tone. "For everyone's sake, he'd better," Adam replied. "We can't have Andrew losing control. We all rely on him to stay level-headed. He's the peacemaker. Imagine what happens if we lose that. This poor, poor town," he muttered, his tone carrying an unsettling edge. He paused before adding, "A burn on his back, a gunshot wound to the back of his thigh and another to his side. And he's in his 50s, so..." Adam's voice trailed off. "Who did it?" Ethan asked, his interest piqued. Adam shot him a sidelong glance before holding his gaze and answering, "Diana and Timothy Blackwood." Ethan didn't respond. He wasn't surprised, not really, but he was shocked yet again at the choice of a second victim. He had expected Diana to go nut after losing two of her eldest, but he hadn't anticipated her going so far as to attack a law enforcement officer. His jaw tightened, his fists slowly clenching at his sides. At this point, there was nothing left to say. He supposed an entire generation was about to be wiped out, just as the year was coming to a close. Just a few feet away, Nathaniel walked alongside Miss Everly, approaching the infirmary. "I think you mentioned that you and Logan went to the same high school," he asked, his tone casual but inquisitive. "Most people our age who are still around here went to the same high school, Nate," Miss Everly teased. Nathaniel chuckled. "Ah, so were you two high school sweethearts?" He came to a halt just a few feet from the gathering, positioning himself in front of her and blocking her view. She eyed him warily, but he simply offered a warm smile. "He's in surgery," Nathaniel said gently, answering the unspoken plea in her gaze. "And with Arya as your niece, you must be used to how agonizingly long these things can feel," he explained. "Let's just hope it doesn't take too long," she murmured. "If it drags on, there could be complications. If it's over too soon, there may be no hope. We need something in between." She attempted a smile, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "You care about him a lot," Nathaniel observed. Miss Everly let out a quiet breath, her expression softening. "When have I not cared about Patrick Logan? He's been a thorn in my side for as long as I can remember. Mine, his parents, the town's." Nathaniel raised an eyebrow. "No way. We're talking about the same Sheriff Logan, right?" She laughed, shaking her head. "Oh, you wouldn't believe it. Patrick was a rebel. He saw himself as some kind of revolutionary, determined to force the system to be better. And the irony? His father was the sheriff." Nathaniel's eyes widened. "You're messing with me." "I wish I was. He was the bad boy of our time. I was 16 when Arya's dad and I lost our father. Our mother had died much earlier, kind of like what happened to Arya when her mother, Elena, passed away. My brother didn't know how to live without her. Just as I was all Arya had when she lost her father, my brother was all I had when I lost mine. Thankfully, he was much older and could take care of me. We were raised a certain way, and breaking the rules wasn't something Everlis did. My brother liked Patrick, just as long as he wasn't sniffing around me, as he used to say. I was supposed to be the perfect child, and no boy was ever good enough. But Patrick, she exhaled as if caught in the gravity of old memories. He was impossible to ignore. Maybe it was fate, or maybe it was something else, but we kept ending up in the same places at the same time. Did we take advantage of that? Yes, but I was the one line he never crossed. He respected me enough to stay a friend for as long as I wanted. And then, he left. Nathaniel frowned. Just like that. He had this idea that the town hated him, that he needed to get out before it swallowed him whole. Said he had to purge the poison from his life. I was devastated, but Patrick wasn't the type to second-guess himself. When he made a decision, he stuck with it. He promised he'd come back. She paused, then gave a small, sad smile. But sometimes you meet the right person at the wrong time. Nathaniel let her words settle before murmuring, "Well, he did come back." "Oh, he did," she said, her voice carrying a bitter edge. But not alone. He returned with a pregnant woman on his arm. Nathaniel's expression darkened. Miss Everly chuckled at his reaction. "Remember what I said. Right person, wrong time." "What happened?" he pressed. "To this day, I don't know the full story. But when he came back, he looked like hell. Like someone who had been dragged out of a grave. Gaunt, exhausted, barely himself. And he avoided me like the plague. I heard Ian talking to someone about him once. They said he was like the Walking Dead. He moved into his parents' house up in the mountains, completely cutting himself off from the town. I figured life had finally knocked some sense into him. There were rumors he had joined the army, that he had been captured." She shook her head. "Whatever happened to him out there, it changed him. But he came back, and somehow he managed to land the deputy job fast enough. Soon he was elected sheriff. The Andersons backed him, and so did my brother." Nathaniel studied her carefully. "And he avoided you all that time?" She gave a short laugh, but there was no humor in it. "Oh, he was determined to disappear from my life until my brother died." She exhaled, her gaze drifting as if replaying a scene from long ago. "He drove down here, sat in his car for almost 30 minutes. Then finally he stepped onto the porch." "What did you do?" Nathaniel asked, completely absorbed. She swallowed. "I was shattered. When I saw him, I didn't think. I just hugged him. He held me, and I remember his grip tightening like he was trying to hold me together. 'I'm so sorry,' was all he said." She was silent for a moment, then added, "He didn't let go until I did. And when he finally looked at me, I saw it. His eyes. They weren't the same. Something had broken him." Nathaniel nodded, his brows furrowing. "And you never talked about it?" he asked. She shrugged. "I figured he'd tell me when he was ready." Nathaniel let out a slow breath, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "I can help you beat it out of him," Nathaniel quipped. Miss Everly chuckled despite herself. "So, does he have a kid here in Sylvan Ridge?" Nathaniel asked. The smile slowly faded from her face, and she shook her head. "His wife miscarried. He doesn't have children," she said, her voice quiet, tinged with sadness. Nathaniel held her gaze, debating whether to ask the question lingering in his mind. Was Logan the reason she never married? But he thought better of it. Instead, he sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. They had both endured so much. It would be a tragedy if Logan died without ever telling his story. It was clear he loved her. Nathaniel had spent enough time around men who had gone through what Sheriff Logan was rumored to have endured. He understood why Logan had kept his distance. Maybe he felt broken, unworthy of her. Or perhaps he was ashamed of the way his life had unfolded and wanted to spare her from sharing in that pain. Either way, Nathaniel hoped they'd get the chance to confront their past, to fill in the gaps left unspoken for too long. "Who did this to him?" Miss Everly asked, her voice low and laced with emotion. Nathaniel exhaled, choosing his words carefully. "A criminal," he said. "One I'm certain Jake will enjoy hunting down." He didn't mention the Blackwoods. Not yet. If Logan didn't make it, the last thing they needed was more bad blood. For now, all that mattered was hoping the sheriff would pull through. After about an hour of waiting, Ash called out to Adam and began walking away before Adam could reach him. Quickening his pace, Adam caught up and fell into step beside him. "What's up?" Adam asked. "Let's make waiting a bit more bearable," he suggested. "Roger that," Adam responded. The two men left to gather pre-cut logs and quickly built a bonfire. They arranged seats around it, and soon people began trickling over to sit and warm themselves. Nathaniel reached for Miss Everly's hand and guided her to a seat by the fire. Before long, Anna and Noria arrived, searching for Ariana. Nathaniel and Miss Everly stood immediately upon seeing them approach. "Do the children need anything?" Nathaniel asked with evident concern. "No, they're fine. We've taken care of them, and Eva and Dawn are with Owen and Liam," Anna reassured him, though her furrowed brow betrayed her concern. Alex could be seen approaching as well. "We just find it odd that Dr. Hawthorne hasn't come to check on them," Noria added, her expression mirroring Anna's worry. "What's going on?" Anna asked, frowning. Nathaniel exhaled as Alex joined them. "Sheriff Logan is in surgery. He was injured," Nathaniel informed them. "What?" Alex exclaimed. "Oh my," Anna murmured, horror flashing across her face. Noria met Miss Everly's gaze, then stepped forward and pulled her into a comforting hug. "Dr. Hawthorne is an excellent surgeon. You know she'll do everything she can to save him," Noria said reassuringly. Miss Everly nodded in gratitude. Anna took the older woman's hand, giving it a gentle squeeze, while Alex added, "It's going to be okay." They all settled back into waiting, though Noria eventually left to check on the triplets. 4 hours later, the door to the infirmary finally opened. Rowan, Dr. Williams, and Aria stepped out. Early on, Aria jogged alongside Andrew to the infirmary and rushed inside. Rowan looked up and, without hesitation, began listing Sheriff Logan's injuries. Aria knew what that meant. He expected her to assist him and Dr. Williams. Patient sustained multiple gunshot wounds, one in the posterior left thigh, another penetrating between the ribs, and a grazing wound on the left shoulder. Additionally, there's a shoulder dislocation and a second-degree burn on his back. He's hemorrhaging, and I'm about to open him up to locate the source. "Welcome to the party," Rowan reported with a hint of anger in his voice. Aria hurried to the makeshift decontamination station in the corner, partially shielded for privacy. She scrubbed her hands thoroughly, then quickly changed into surgical scrubs. Pulling a cap over her hair, she secured a mask over her face, donned sterile gloves, and stepped out to join them. "All right, let's do this," Aria said, avoiding looking at Sheriff Logan's face. She appreciated that Rowan was keeping his assessment clinical. Hearing the full extent of Logan's injuries made her chest tighten, but she forced herself to stay focused. Saving his life was all that mattered now, especially after realizing why he had always been kind to her and what he meant to her aunt. Her aunt had done so much for her, standing by her side from the moment she found out she was pregnant with Owen and Liam, offering unwavering support through every challenge. Now, the least Aria could do was fight to save the man her aunt loved. "Great. Glad to have you on board, Dr. Hawthorne," Dr. Williams said. "But we need Anita or Nurse Esther. Anita's on her way," Andrew called from the doorway before retreating. Meanwhile, Rowan was already making an incision between Logan's ribs at the bullet entry point. Blood pooled into the cavity. "We need to retrieve the bullet before we lose more blood," he said, his voice deep and detached. Just then, Anita rushed in, breathing heavily. Aria glanced at her. "Scrub in," she said simply. Anita dashed to the cleaning area, quickly scrubbing and donning surgical gear before joining them. Aria grabbed a pair of forceps from the surgical instruments laid out beside the bed and carefully inserted them, maneuvering past the damaged tissue. "I have it," she said under her breath as she extracted the bullet and placed it in a tray Anita held forward. "Clamp," she requested with a hand held out. Anita handed her the vascular clamp. She secured the vessel and sutured the laceration. "Bleeding has stopped. Irrigate," Aria announced. Anita flushed the wound with sterile saline while Rowan assessed it for further damage. "No lung puncture. We can close," he said, almost to himself. He then sutured the muscle layers and skin before adding, "Chest wound closed." "What's next?" Suddenly, the monitors started to beep, drawing everyone's attention. Arya and Anita instinctively shared a look, their hearts hammering in their chests. Dr. Williams checked and read the vitals. Heart rate spiking, possible tension pneumothorax, he announced, his voice laced with tension. Arya didn't even hesitate. She grabbed a large bore needle Anita had placed on a tray and inserted it into Logan's chest, making a rush of air to escape. Everyone held their breath. Then the noise from the monitors stopped and the readings slowly stabilized. A collective sigh resounded in the room. Needle decompression, successful, but he'll need a chest tube, Arya said, prompting Rowan to step in. He deftly prepped the site. Then Arya made a small incision, inserted the chest tube, and secured it. That should help with his breathing, she remarked as she moved to stand at the foot of the bed, reaching out to examine Logan's leg. Gunshot wound to the posterior thigh. We need to check for bullet retention, she said. Rowan moved closer, touching and feeling the wound to check its condition. No exit, he observed. Imaging needed, Arya announced. Dr. Williams quickly reviewed the portable X-ray. The bullet is near the femur but missed the artery, he informed them. Arya then made a precise incision at the marked location, exposing the bullet. Rowan extracted it with forceps. Anita irrigated the wound before Arya sutured the deeper layers. Leg wound closed, she announced again. Rowan, who was now examining Logan's shoulder, said, "Grazing wound here. Needs decontamination," he informed. Anita handed him an antiseptic and he started to clean the area. No deep tissue involvement. Sutures? Anita probed with interest. Arya moved closer to assess the wound. "Not necessary. Apply a sterile dressing," she remarked. Dr. Williams, who was monitoring Logan's vitals, said, "Blood pressure is stabilizing. Shoulder dislocation needs reduction," he reminded them. Rowan, Anita, and Arya carefully turned Logan onto his side. Williams then reached for Logan's dislocated arm, externally rotated it, and applied controlled traction. A dull pop confirmed the joint's realignment. "Done. Shoulder repositioned," he said with relief. "We need to treat the burn." "Let's maintain this position," Anita instructed, striving to stay emotionally detached, which was a challenge after witnessing the severity of Sheriff Logan's injuries. Williams joined Rowan and Arya in holding Logan steady, ensuring the chest tube and monitoring leads remained secure, while Anita carefully cleaned the burn, gently removing any dead or damaged tissue to prevent infection and promote fast healing. She applied antibiotic ointment and dressed the area. Once finished, they supported Logan with pillows to prevent pressure on his back, while maintaining airway and circulation integrity. Anita then started to document the vitals, creating a comprehensive medical chart for Sheriff Logan while Arya reinforced sutures. Rowan and Williams removed their gloves with a sigh. "Now it's up to him," Rowan said, as Williams stood beside him, the two watching Logan's pale face. When Arya finished, she stepped back with a heavy sigh, finally allowing herself to take in Logan's battered form. The tubes, the machines keeping him stable, each one a stark reminder of what had been done to him. Her gaze shifted to Anita, who stood by the bedside. She had likely finished recording his vitals, but remained there, simply watching him. Discarding her gloves, Arya stepped forward and gave Anita a quick hug before pulling away. "Who in the world did this?" Anita asked, her voice thick with emotion. "Whoever they are, they won't win," Arya responded. Turning toward the exit, she added, "Let's tell the family. I'm sure everyone is eager to know that he's still alive, at least." Rowan and Williams fell in step behind her. Rowan moved ahead to open the door, allowing Arya to pass through first. She gave him a small nod of acknowledgement before stepping outside. The cold, crisp air hit her immediately. Across the snow-covered grounds, a group stood waiting, including Nathaniel, who remained close to her aunt. The sight of them, their unwavering presence despite the biting cold and pitch-dark surroundings, made Arya's throat tighten. Nathaniel gently took her aunt's hand and began leading her toward the infirmary. Even from a distance, under the dim orange glow of the garden lights, Arya met her aunt's anxious gaze. She gave a small nod, silent confirmation that Logan was still alive. "How is he?" Andrew asked. "The surgery was successful." "He's alive," Arya answered. "But we need to keep him under observation for a few more hours before I can be certain of his condition," she cautioned. "He's alive right now, though," Jake pressed. "Yes, Jake." "He is," Arya reassured him. Her eyes found Nathaniel, who was watching her with a quiet gleam of pride. He looked exhausted. "Anita is with him. I'll rally our people. We'll take turns watching over him. We will fight to keep him here with us," she said, then turned to her aunt and added, "I promise." "Can I see him?" Miss Everly asked, her voice low and unsteady. Arya hesitated. "I don't think you should, Auntie," she admitted, her professional tone slipping as emotion crept in. "I don't mind blood, Ariana," Miss Everly implored with feeling. Arya lowered her gaze, struggling to contain her emotions. If it had been Nathaniel in that bed, nothing would have kept her out. "Yes, Auntie, you can see him," she relented. Rowan stepped forward, gently taking Miss Everly's hand to lead her inside. Nathaniel moved toward Arya, but she held up a hand. "I have blood on me, my love. I need to clean up first," she said. "I don't mind blood," Nathaniel murmured. His quiet words blurred her vision with unshed tears. Then a haunting, subdued cry broke through the night. Miss Everly's anguish echoed from inside the infirmary. The group outside fell into silence. Andrew let out an angry growl and met Jake's gaze. Jake turned abruptly and started to walk away. Charles followed. Ash fell in step behind him. Aidan, Stephen, and Anton joined without a word. Jake headed straight for the barn, never looking back. He didn't need to. He knew the others were right behind him. Without hesitation, he grabbed a shotgun, passed out weapons, then packed a few more into a carry-all bag before heading out. The others followed. They were approaching their jeeps when headlights cut through the darkness. Lewis pulled up, Bennett and Fields in tow. Rolling down the window, he frowned at the group. "Where's the fire?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. A moment later, Bennett and Fields were making their way toward the infirmary, while Lewis joined the 6 men. "How are we going to find them?" Lewis asked, his voice rough, anger simmering beneath the surface. "Stephen got their plate number. We have a location," Anton replied. Lewis exhaled, leaning back as he pulled out his hunting knife, turning it over in his hand. As soon as Aidan realized where the trail was leading, up into the mountains, he glanced at the Jeep's dashboard and noted the name attached to the house the map was directing them to. Recognition struck. Justin had mentioned something about a den of criminals Doug had established in his late father's house. Aidan clenched his jaw. He wasn't surprised that the former Blackwoods had chosen to align themselves with Doug's old gang. Todd was still around. That much he knew. But he hadn't expected the idiot to keep running with the same crowd instead of learning his lesson and staying out of trouble. Aidan wondered how many of Doug's people were still standing after their last attack on Everly Hospital. More importantly, he wondered how many were left up in the mountains. It looked like they were about to conduct a thorough cleanup of Sylvan Ridge because anyone who stood in their way wasn't going to walk away unscathed. "Typical," Jake muttered from the driver's seat. "Birds of a feather, they say." He scanned the area for a place to park. "We're going to need someone to stay and watch the car," Jake said. "I'm not staying in the car," Ash declared. The moment the Jeep rolled to a stop, he reached for the door handle and climbed out. Charles followed suit. Stephen hesitated as Aidan disembarked. "I'll watch the car," Anton said after a round of back-and-forth refusals. "You sure?" Jake asked. "I can move it if needed," Anton replied with a blank expression. Jake would have laughed if the situation weren't so serious. "We need a ride back, Anton. Let's not forget that," Jake reminded him. "Sure thing," Anton replied. He began loading up his weapon while the others did the same. They all donned tactical masks fitted with night vision goggles before starting the remainder of the trek up the mountain. Anton prepped the Jeep, stacking the passenger seat with an arsenal. Shotguns, magnums, tear gas canisters, grenades, smoke bombs, poison darts, hunting knives, and several rolls of ammunition magazines. Once satisfied, he settled behind the wheel, adjusting his own mask. Jake and Charles took the lead as they ascended the rugged terrain. The climb was made more difficult by the snow-covered ground, but none of the men paid it any mind. The burning anger inside them only intensified as they neared their target. Checking his digital watch, Jake saw that the scanner indicated they were close. He signaled for the men to follow as he veered off the main path, slipping into the woods and onto a rock-strewn incline. The terrain grew harsher, but they pressed on without hesitation. At the summit, they emerged onto a vast open expanse of rocky ground. A house sat in the center of the clearing, nestled beneath the looming presence of dark willow trees that stood like silent sentinels. Smoke curled from the chimney into the frigid night air. The structure was old, its wooden walls weathered and worn, the steep roof blanketed in snow. From their vantage point, Charles could make out remnants of what had once been a working ranch. Collapsed animal pens and a dilapidated horse stall stood at the far end of the property, their skeletal remains half buried in snowdrifts. The barn's roof sagged, and its walls bore the scars of decay. There were no visible power lines, but a bonfire flickered near the side of the house, casting long shadows over the frozen ground. 3 beat-up trucks were parked haphazardly nearby. The house itself showed signs of occupation. A faint glow seeped through the windows, likely from candles or oil lamps. Charles exhaled, his breath fogging in the cold air. What a perfect setup for the town's rejects, Stephen muttered, almost to himself. His hushed tone carried to the others in the silence as they scanned the grounds. Aidan focused on the people visible from where they stood. His eyes first landed on the perimeter, where barbed wire barricades enclosed the area. He noted the absence of electricity, no power lines, no sound of a generator, so the barbed wire was unlikely to be electrified. Shifting his gaze toward the bonfire, he searched for familiar faces, particularly the men who had shown up at Ethan's house or a blonde woman matching Diana's description. His eyes settled instead on a familiar beat-up truck, confirming the presence of the same assholes. Even if they weren't all here, anyone on these grounds had to be an accomplice, and he was more than ready to make them pay for it. He scanned for a boulder they could use to scale the barbed wire fence, and spotted one just as Ash was already making his way toward it, Jake and Charles in tow. Aidan followed, with Stephen and Lewis joining them. One by one, they climbed the boulder and jumped to the other side. The men instinctively spread out, Aidan heading for the bonfire, Jake advancing toward the house, Ash moving toward the barn at the back, and Charles circling to the rear of the house with Stephen following. Lewis stayed with Aidan, ready to strike. Aidan and Lewis advanced on the group gathered around the fire, silently scanning their faces with weapons drawn. When one of the seated men spotted them, his face went pale, and he jerked upright, reaching for a gun. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," Lewis warned, his voice even. The man froze. The others jumped up in alarm. One cursed and bolted. Without hesitation, Lewis took aim and fired at his leg. The silenced shot barely made a sound, but the man collapsed onto the snow with a pained groan. Aidan didn't break his stride. "We're looking for Diana and Timothy Blackwood. Hand them over and there won't be trouble." One of the men spat onto the snow while a few exchanged wary glances. "There'll be a cold day in hell," the man who spat started to say. Lewis didn't shoot him. Instead, he hurled a hunting knife straight into his throat. The man gasped, eyes wide with horror, as the others skittered away from him. Lewis strode forward, gripped the hilt of the knife still lodged in the man's throat, and yanked it free. Blood poured through his fingers as he clutched his neck in a futile attempt to stop the bleeding. He sank to his knees before collapsing onto the snow, choking. "I know who you are." "You've got some nerve coming here," another man growled. Aidan raised his gun and, without sparing the man a glance, fired a single shot to his head. The man gasped and pitched forward, landing face first into the bonfire. Flames crackled and spread, quickly consuming his hair and clothes. The stench of burning flesh filled the frigid air. A horrified gasp rippled through the group as they instinctively backed away. "Whoever speaks next better be pointing us in the right direction. We have no patience for pointless talk," Lewis snarled. "You can't just kill." The man never finished. Lewis fired, and he crumpled to the ground. The remaining 5 backed away, fists clenched at their sides, fear evident in their eyes. "Where the fuck are they?" Aidan growled. One man hesitated, then slowly lifted a hand and pointed toward the house. Without another word, Aidan and Lewis moved, their boots crunching against the frozen ground. Sensing an opportunity, 3 of the men drew their weapons, but before they could fire, gunshots erupted from the tree line. One by one, they fell, bodies hitting the snow in rapid succession. The last remaining man turned and bolted toward one of the trucks. Lewis whirled around and fired at the tires. The vehicle lurched as the rubber shredded. The man tumbled to the ground, hands instinctively shooting to the back of his head in surrender. "Okay, okay," he shouted in panic. The only sounds that lingered were the distant wind, the agonized groans of the man Lewis had first shot in the leg, and the faint crackling of the fire as it consumed its latest victim. A minute earlier, with Aidan and Lewis creating a distraction at the bonfire, Jake slipped into the house unnoticed. The first thing that hit him was the stale, damp stench of mold, aged wood, and animal hides. The air was thick with the scent of decay, mingling with the acrid smokiness from the fireplace. Despite the oppressive odor, the living room was surprisingly tidy, though the old furniture looked barely held together, as if it had been repaired one too many times. A stack of firewood was piled beside the stone chimney, where flames crackled, casting flickering shadows across the worn wooden floor. The house seemed empty until a faint thud sounded from above the deck. Jake's gaze immediately locked onto the staircase. With his gun drawn, he moved forward, his ears picking up a low grunt followed by a muffled moan from upstairs. He carefully placed his boot on the first step, testing for weak spots. The warped wood groaned under his weight, but he pressed on, each step creaking as he ascended. As his head rose above the floorboards of the upper level, he scanned the area ahead. From the dimly lit landing, he saw a man slouched on a worn-out couch, a couple of empty liquor bottles on the floor beside him. Kneeling between his legs was a woman, her face buried in his lap. Jake didn't need to guess what was happening. What he hadn't expected was the man forcing her down. Ignoring her choking as his grunts grew louder, Jake stepped forward and pressed the barrel of his gun against the man's head. The man froze, giving the lady a chance to yank herself free, falling onto her backside, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "You bastard!" she spat, her voice shaking. Then she saw Jake and went still. "Are you okay?" Jake asked, barely sparing the man a glance as he kept his weapon trained on him. The girl wiped her tear-streaked face and mouth with the back of her hand before slowly getting to her feet. Realizing Jake wasn't a threat, she turned her glare on the man in the chair, then stepped forward and spat on him. The man cursed and lurched toward her, but Jake shoved him back down. The girl flinched, momentarily startled, but when she saw that Jake had restrained him, a flicker of a smile wavered on her lips. "No amount of money would ever make me come back here, you sick freak," she shouted at the man. "Oh, so it's that kind of arrangement," Jake said dryly. "What do you think? You think I'd be here with this piece of shit for free?" she snapped, voice thick with anger. Jake tilted his head. "I hope he's paid you, ma'am." "Damn right he has." She reached out and slapped the man hard across the face as he fumbled to pull up his pants. He growled and tried to grab her again, but Jake shoved him back onto the couch, his fingers digging into the man's shoulder. The man let out a pained grunt as Jake pressed the muzzle of his magnum hard against his temple. "You should leave, ma'am," Jake said through clenched teeth. She nodded, heading toward the stairs, then paused. Her eyes swept over Jake's masked face. "Bet you're handsome under that mask. Your voice sure sounds delicious." "I'll do you for $100, she offered with a smirk. Jake fought the urge to shudder. "No, God no. But thanks." Then his voice hardened. "Now beat it." She flinched at the shift in his tone, then rolled her eyes and started down the stairs, muttering under her breath. "Should have listened to my ma. Men ain't no good. Gonna be a fish in my next life. Yes, sir, a fish for sure," she grumbled as she disappeared. Jake exhaled, turning his attention back to the man on the couch who glared up at him with a mix of fury and defiance. "I don't know who the hell you are, but you're going to regret this," the man growled, his voice low and venomous. Jake scoffed. "After what I just saw between your legs, I'm already regretting it, buddy." The man's face twisted in rage. He started to lunge again, but Jake cut him off, slamming the butt of his gun against his temple. The man let out a strangled grunt, slumping back against the couch, dazed. Jake leaned in, voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "Where are your house guests, your fresh recruits?" The man groaned, blinking rapidly as his head lolled. Jake pressed the barrel harder against his skull. "You have 1 second to answer, Romeo." The man growled, a deep, guttural sound. "Why don't you drop your gun and let's talk man to man, huh? Or what, you too much of a pussy?" he sneered. Jake grabbed him by the shoulders and hauled him to his feet, shoving the couch aside to clear the space between them. The man swallowed hard as he looked up. Jake had at least 3 inches on him despite his stocky build. "Go on, porkface. What was that about man to man?" Jake snarled, baring his teeth. The man's broad chest rose and fell heavily as he worked up the nerve. Then, with a grunt, he lunged forward, trying to shove Jake back. When that failed, he attempted to lift him. Jake didn't budge. Desperation flashed across the man's face, and he suddenly lunged for the pistol sitting on a side table. Jake fired before he could reach it, the silenced round punching through the man's hand. He let out a sharp cry, cradling his wounded hand against his chest, but before Jake could follow up, he caught the sound of a door opening behind him. He turned, just slightly, enough for the man to take his chance. Lowering his shoulder like a linebacker, he charged, trying to bulldoze Jake to the ground. Jake reacted instantly. He twisted to the side, driving his elbow down onto the back of the man's skull. The impact sent him reeling. Before he could recover, Jake looped an arm around his thick neck, lifted him slightly off the ground, and slammed him down, forcing his throat directly into Jake's raised knee. A strangled, choking sound tore from the man's throat as he crumpled, his hands clutching at his crushed windpipe. His body flailed weakly, his strength draining fast. Jake needed him incapacitated. With one swift motion, he drew his knife and buried it deep into the man's ribcage, slipping the blade between the ribs to avoid an instant kill, but ensuring he wouldn't get up again. The man gasped, his limbs going slack as he slumped against the wall. Jake turned toward the adjoining door. Todd stood there, barely holding himself up, his face pale with horror. The moment his eyes met Jake's, he stumbled backward into the room. Jake followed, knowing Todd had recognized him from the bar. The man hadn't been the same since. Jake stepped into the doorway just in time to see Todd perched on the windowsill, half in and half out, his breathing erratic. "Don't be stupid, Todd." Todd launched himself out. Jake strode to the window, watching as Todd hit the snow-packed ground below with a sickening thud. "Help me!" Todd groaned, writhing in pain. Jake exhaled, shaking his head. "Damn," he muttered under his breath. He leaned against the window frame, calling down, "I was just gonna ask a question." "Freaks! Bloody freaks!" Todd screamed from the ground, his voice raw with terror. Jake huffed a quiet laugh, watching him flail. "Poor bastard, he's gone and lost his criminal mind," he muttered, turning away and stepping out of the room. As Jake stepped out of the room, he spotted movement at the far end of the hallway. A figure emerged, gun raised, just as Aiden and Lewis reached the top of the stairs. The gunman was Timothy Blackwood. He barely had time to take aim before Aiden fired first, his rounds tearing into Timothy's legs. A sharp groan escaped the boy as he buckled under the impact. Aiden and Lewis charged down the hallway with Jake close behind. By the time they reached the room, Timothy had made his decision. Just like Todd before him, he threw himself out of the window. Aiden and Lewis rushed to the opening, weapons still at the ready. But as they aimed downward, they saw exactly who Timothy had landed in front of. Charles, a few minutes earlier. While the others handled scattering the hen pen at the house, Charles circled the perimeter alongside Stephen. They walked with boldness as if they belonged there, scanning for stragglers. Near the back of the property, they spotted 2 men outside taking a smoke break. The moment the men saw them, they reached for their weapons. They never got the chance to fire. 2 muffled shots, 2 bodies crumpled into the snow. Charles and Stephen didn't even break their stride. When Stephen saw Ash walking further into the woods out back, he changed course. "Be right back," he said over his shoulder to Charles. "Copy that." Charles responded in a dry tone and continued his sweep of the grounds as Stephen jogged away. He soon passed a crumbling structure where loud, rhythmic noises, moaning, panting, the unmistakable sounds of a couple lost in the moment, drifted out. Discretion clearly wasn't a concern. Charles ignored them and kept moving. Then as he rounded the end of the building, he spotted another group, 4 men, all heavily armed, emerging from a barn. And as the others waited, one of them secured a padlock on the door. Then he heard it. A muffled cry from inside. A female? Charles stopped. "Hey, fellas," he called out, his tone casual. "Mind telling me who you've got locked in there?" The men immediately turned, squinting into the darkness. "Who the hell is that?" One of them barked. "Sounds like Henry," another guessed. "No, dumbass, that ain't Henry," a third snapped, smacking the guy in the head. Charles stepped into the dim glow of the moonlight. One of the men flicked on a flashlight, aiming it at him. "Shit, that's not Henry." Charles fired before they could react. The suppressor kept the gunshots muted. 4 bodies hit the ground before any of them could lift their weapons. He then strode toward the barn, leveled his gun at the padlock, and shot it off. Kicking the door open, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a glow stick, tossing it inside. The dim green light revealed 4 women huddled under a single dirty blanket. The air inside reeked of unwashed bodies and human waste. "You can come out? You're free," Charles said before turning away, not waiting to see if the women complied. He made his way back to the rundown shack where he had heard the couple earlier. Peering into their cramped space, he tossed in a glow stick to catch their attention. Keeping his gaze above torso level, he watched as the 2 gaped at him, their expressions caught somewhere between shock and confusion, as if he were some kind of alien. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, "but ma'am, is this consensual?" Silence stretched between them. Then the woman hesitated before muttering, "Yes." Charles gave a slight nod. "Carry on then." "Hey!" The man's angry voice rang out behind him. "Who the hell are you?" he bellowed. "Don't mind me," Charles replied over his shoulder, unfazed. "Just looking around." He kept walking. He was halfway back to the house when something crashed into the snow-covered ground ahead of him. A body. Charles paused, watching in mild amusement. He glanced up at the second-floor window and immediately suspected who was behind it. Jake. The man on the ground groaned, writhing in pain. Then another figure hurtled through the air. Charles smirked until he saw who it was. Timothy. His amusement disappeared. "Well," he muttered, "ain't this interesting?" On the far side of the grounds, near the woods, Ash moved carefully, following the rhythmic sound of a shovel striking dirt. He was mindful not to make too much noise and risk alerting whoever was out there. The snow-covered terrain made each step a challenge as he navigated through the looming, shadowed canopy of willow trees. Before long, he reached the edge of a clearing and took in the scene. 4 men digging graves, their shovels carving into the frozen earth. Nearby, 5 bodies lay on the ground, their lifeless forms illuminated by the dim glow of lantern light. Ash's gaze swept over the corpses, his stomach tightening. Though he couldn't be certain from this distance, the victims appeared to be mostly female, and among them was a smaller body, likely a child. A slow, simmering rage spread through him, coiling tightly in his chest. He rolled his neck in an attempt to contain it, but he wasn't sure it helped. Slipping his gun back into its holster, he drew his knives. Just then, the soft crack of a boot crushing a twig sounded behind him. He stilled, muscles taut, resisting the urge to react on instinct. Jake had warned him more than once about letting his reflexes dictate his actions, and now he was grateful for the lesson, because a moment later he realized it was Stephen. The other man stepped up beside him, surveying the scene ahead. A low, guttural growl rumbled from Stephen's chest, confirming he saw exactly what Ash had. Ash signaled for Stephen to watch his back, not because he thought he needed it, but because it was what was expected of him. Then, moving like a shadow, he slipped through the trees, circling around to the other side of the clearing. Once close enough, he gripped the hilts of his knives and slid through the opening. The gravediggers never saw him coming. Ash struck fast, one blade slicing deep into the neck of the first man, the other driving into the spine of the second. The remaining 2 stumbled backward, staring in stunned silence as their companions collapsed, then tumbled headfirst into the open grave. Their shock turned to desperation as they raised their shovels in defense. But Ash advanced without hesitation, an unstoppable force. A gunshot rang out. The last 2 men screamed as bullets tore into the backs of their legs. Stephen stood like a sentinel, gun in hand, watching over Ash as he closed in. The first wounded man barely had time to plead before Ash drove a knife into his stomach, eviscerating him. He let out a strangled gasp before being tossed into the grave. The last survivor, eyes wide with terror, tried to crawl away, but Ash stomped down on his ankle with brutal force, bones snapping under his boot. "See how easy it is to prey on the weak," Ash growled. The man whimpered, clutching his ruined leg, but Ash ignored him. Without a second thought, he dragged him to the open pit and threw him in with the others. "Alive! Please, please, please!" the man cried, his voice growing hoarse. Ash tuned him out. He grabbed a shovel and began piling dirt over the grave. Stephen joined him, silently helping to bury the men, muffling the last survivor's screams beneath the earth. When Ash finally turned toward the other bodies, Stephen stepped up beside him. "We should call the police. Maybe they can identify them," Stephen said. "Yeah," Ash muttered in agreement, then turned away. Stephen lingered a moment, glancing at the bodies. He then made the sign of the cross before following Ash back. The two emerged from the woods and into the open just in time to see bodies dropping from the window. Charles stood nearby watching. Ash's eyes landed on a man a short distance behind Charles. Without hesitation, he pulled out his gun, leveled it, and barked, "On the floor now!" The man cursed under his breath, turning toward the source of the command. He spotted two heavily armed men closing in, their weapons trained on him. "Don't shoot him!" A woman's voice rang out from behind. Ash hesitated, flicking his gaze between the man and the woman. Then, before anyone could react, a group of women rushed the woman from behind. They yanked her down by her hair, dragging her to the ground, surrounding her like a pack of rabid dogs. Screams and curses filled the air as they clawed at her. "Leave her alone!" The man on his knees shouted but didn't dare move. "Help her!" he yelled in Ash's direction. Ash remained still. Stephen stepped closer, listening to the rage-filled voices. "You sold us out!" one of the women spat. "You helped them take us!" another screamed, yanking the woman's hair. "How many more did you lure in, huh?" someone demanded. "You sat there and watched while they hurt us. You think we'd forget? You think we'd let you walk away?" As he pieced together their words, the truth became clear. The woman under attack had helped kidnap the others. Stephen stepped back. "What's that about?" Ash asked. "Calmer," Stephen responded calmly. Aidan, Lewis, and Jake soon joined Charles. Ignoring Todd, Charles walked up to Timothy, who lay bleeding from his left leg, now visibly broken. Without a word, Charles pressed his boot against the shattered limb. Timothy's agonized scream pierced the air. Charles didn't stop until the boy was on the brink of passing out. Then, grabbing him by the collar, he yanked him upright and leaned in. "See how the tables turn?" Charles said, his voice low. "Now, where is your mother?" Timothy sucked in quick, shallow breaths, his face twisted in pain. He hesitated. Charles pulled back and struck him across the face with the back of his hand, splitting his lip. Blood trickled down his chin. "Where is your mother?" he demanded again. Timothy trembled, his eyes glassy with tears. Aidan stepped forward and grabbed his other leg. "Please, please, please," Timothy sobbed. "Where the fuck is your mother?" Aidan bellowed. "Town, she went to town," Timothy gasped. Aidan let go of his leg, but Lewis grabbed it. A sickening crack followed as he broke the leg. Timothy let out a strangled scream before passing out from the pain. Charles straightened, gripping the boy by his collar. Dragging him toward the entrance of the compound, he stopped and waited. Aidan, Lewis, and Jake joined him. Stephen moved closer to the man Ash held at gunpoint, hog-tying him before dragging him over to Todd, who was nearly delirious with pain. Before long, the distant rumble of an approaching vehicle broke the silence. Anton's voice crackled through their comms, notifying them that it was Diana. Charles, Lewis, Jake, and Aidan positioned themselves like a human barricade. As the vehicle neared, its headlights cutting through the darkness, Charles grabbed Timothy by the collar and hauled his unconscious body upright. The moment the beams illuminated them, he raised his gun, pressed it to Timothy's head, and pulled the trigger. A scream rang out from the speeding vehicle, and it surged toward them. Jake, Lewis, and Aidan lifted their guns and fired directly at the driver. Just before the car could plow into them, they leapt out of the way. The vehicle lost control and didn't stop until it crashed into the side of the building with a sickening impact. Aidan aimed at the gas tank of the wrecked car and pulled the trigger. A loud boom tore through the air as the vehicle erupted in flames. Anton pulled up to the entrance and the men drifted inside. No one spoke as Anton turned the car around and headed down the sloping driveway. As they drove, Jake's gaze flicked to another wrecked car abandoned by the roadside. The weapons scattered across the front passenger seat told their own story. About 5 minutes away from the scene, Stephen pulled out his phone and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? The operator answered. Disguising his voice, Stephen replied, "Sounds like trouble up the mountain. We're hearing gunshots." Then he hung up. As soon as Arya's aunt's cry rang out and his men began to leave, Nathaniel immediately understood what it meant. Miss Everly had been a steadfast presence in their lives, always offering her support in any way she could. Nathaniel had long taken note of her unwavering dedication. Not only had she stood by his wife's side throughout the period she lost her father and discovered she was pregnant, but she had also sacrificed her life at Sylvan Ridge to move to New York, ensuring she could be there for Arya and her children. She had given her time and care without expectation of gratitude or compensation, and she had remained just as devoted to the triplets. Nathaniel was certain she had never missed a morning caring for them. He also knew his men had noticed, and God only knew what else she had done behind the scenes that he had yet to learn. Arya pulled back from him, reaching for his hand as she moved to return to the infirmary to join her aunt. Ethan was already ahead with Anna and Alex. Everyone entered the room carefully, mindful of maintaining distance to avoid bringing in any potential contaminants. But Ethan didn't hesitate. He went straight to where Miss Everly was huddled in the chair by the bedside. Without a word, he wrapped his arms around her, gently pulling her to her feet and holding her close. Pressing a kiss to her hair, he whispered, "I am so sorry." Arya paused mid-stride, and Nathaniel felt his chest tighten, recognizing the weight of Ethan's guilt. He knew Ethan felt responsible, even though he bore no fault for what had happened. If anything, Ethan had managed to evade attacks solely because of his residence. Had he ventured out alone, like he had recklessly done in New York, he might have suffered Justin's fate, or worse, endured an ordeal akin to Longan's. But Nathaniel was certain of one thing. Unless Diana and her son fled town, their days of causing trouble were numbered. Arya hated seeing her aunt in pain. She had always been the strong pillar, and it hurt to see her like this. Slowly, she stepped closer, joining Ethan. When their eyes met, Arya reached out, wrapping her arms around her aunt. "Help me save him, please," she whispered, her voice low and pleading. Arya nodded, unable to find her voice. Across the bed, Anita stood silently, still clutching Logan's medical report. Tears streamed down her face as she cried quietly, praying that Sheriff Logan would pull through. When Arya pulled back, Nathaniel stepped forward and cupped Miss Everly's face, offering her a small smile. "Oh, how am I going to tease you when Logan is up and about?" he said, his tone light. Despite herself, she let out a soft laugh. Nathaniel pulled her into a hug. "It's okay. I'm sure he can hear you and knows he has a reason to fight." "Trust me, I know that feeling," he murmured. Miss Everly nodded against his chest. Dr. Fields and Dr. Bennett entered shortly after. Cassandra lifted a hand to her mouth at the sight of Logan's injuries. Juliet turned away, her vision blurred with tears. They all knew the older man, protective and kind. She could only hope that Lewis and the others would find the bastards responsible. Nurse Estate and Nurse Paul arrived alongside Yen and Sterling, gathering around the bed. Before Arya could mention the watch rotation, Yen spoke up. "We can take it from here, boss," she said, her voice low and resolute. Arya nodded in gratitude. Turning to Miss Everly, Yen added, "He's in good hands, I promise. It's okay to go. I'll let you know when he wakes up." When Miss Everly hesitated, Ethan and Nathaniel gently took her hands and guided her out of the room. Arya lingered for a moment before finally leaving with Anna. Outside, she noticed Andrew still waiting alongside Adam and several other guards. She approached him, looking up into his eyes. "Are the guys back yet?" she asked, already knowing the earlier exit wasn't just about the guys needing space or to clear their heads. She could tell Andrew was angry about what had happened to Sheriff Logan. After all, Andrew had worked closely with him since their arrival at Sylvan Ridge, and Logan had always been thorough and kind, which would make it easy to gain the respect of someone like Andrew. They're on their way back, Andrew lied, though he had no real confirmation. Still, he had faith that his men would leave no stone unturned until those responsible paid for their crimes. But Dr. Hawthorne didn't need to know about that. Good, Arya replied, patting Andrew on his broad chest. Make sure to tell them I want all of them back in one piece. Andrew nodded, a reluctant smile tugging at the corners of his lips despite himself. Of course, Dr. Hawthorne, he replied, his voice deep and mellowed. Arya gave him a nod of acknowledgement and parted Adam on the forearm before heading off. Anna followed close behind, acknowledging Andrew and Adam with a brief nod as well. At the house, as soon as Nathaniel, Ethan and Jake ushered Miss Everly inside, Owen, who had been sitting with Evangeline and Isla, got up to meet them halfway. Despite her somber mood, Nathaniel noticed how Miss Everly instinctively held out her arms for Owen, but the boys stopped a few feet away, studying her face with curiosity. Have you been crying, Big Mama? Owen asked, his expression a mix of mild horror and concern. Yeah, just a little, Miss Everly admitted with a small smile. Owen frowned, still refusing to accept her hug. Why? He asked, suspicion lacing his voice. A dear friend of Big Mama's mine, your mum's and Aunt Anita's is feeling unwell, so we're all a bit sad right now, Ethan explained as he stepped forward and lifted Owen into his arms. Owen glanced between Ethan, Miss Everly and his father, as if trying to piece together who it was and whether Ethan was telling the truth. I must know the person then. Give me a name, he demanded. It's Sheriff Logan, Owen, Miss Everly answered. Owen's frown deepened. It's the flu, isn't it? He asked with a sigh. No, Nathaniel said. More like a run-in with some bad guys. You know he's the law. Nathaniel knew that Miss Everly had revealed the sheriff's identity for a reason, and he wondered why. But police officers are supposed to be untouchable. It's downright suicidal to pick a fight with the law. I've read about it, Owen said with furrowed brows. Yup, big mistake, Ethan agreed. Owen hummed in thought before asking to be put down. Once on his feet, he finally accepted Miss Everly's hug, gently wiping her face with his small hands as she bent down to embrace him. Don't cry, Big Mama. You know Mum will take care of him, he said with unwavering confidence. Thanks, dear, Miss Everly replied. Owen nodded, then took a step back. Raising a hand, he said, Give me a sec, before turning and dashing toward the stairs. Noticing Nathaniel watching him leave, Miss Everly said, He gets really anxious when Liam is sick. Nathaniel nodded, realizing that was why she had told Owen exactly who they were talking about. Evangeline and Isla joined Ethan, Nathaniel, Alex, and Miss Everly. Thank you for looking after the kids, Eva. You too, Isla, Nathaniel said. You don't have to thank us, boss, Isla replied with a warm smile. Yeah, besides, Noria did most of the heavy lifting. She's with them upstairs now, Evangeline added with a warm smile. Nathaniel nodded in gratitude. As the conversation continued, he quietly slipped away and headed upstairs. Arya, walking in with Anna, saw him hurrying up the stairs. Nathaniel checked Owen and Liam's room first, finding Owen beside Liam's bed, softly reading his medical chart in a low, soft voice. His pet robot hovered nearby as he instructed it to cross-check the diagnosis. Not that I think they made a mistake, Robo-Boy. We're just making sure they got it right. 'Cause he should be up by now, right? He's been sleeping for how long again? Owen asked. The robot responded, recounting the number of hours Liam had been asleep. So then you understand why I think something is wrong? Owen said with a frown before leaning in to press his ear against Liam's chest. Nathaniel watched as his son's frown deepened. Then he saw Liam's lips twitch. Shaking his head with a small smile, he finally stepped inside, drawing Owen's attention. Dad, I think something's wrong with Liam. He's not breathing right, Owen said, worry etched across his face. Nathaniel ruffled Owen's hair affectionately and reassured him, He's fine, son. Remember how active he usually is? Owen hesitated, then nodded. Nathaniel continued. He just needs more rest to regain his strength, and the medication is still working to fight off the cold and fever. He lifted Owen onto his lap as he sat in a small space beside Liam. Then, reaching out, he lightly tapped Liam's nose. Liam's lashes fluttered, and his eyes lazily opened, still heavy with sleep. "How are you feeling, Liam? Owen's been pretty worried," Nathaniel said, making it clear that now wasn't the time to tease his brother. Liam nodded sleepily and reached out a hand toward Owen. Without hesitation, Owen took it, and the two brothers held hands. Nathaniel felt his chest tighten at the sight. "I'm fine, Owen, I promise," Liam assured in a soft tone. "But you've been sleeping for so long," Owen countered. "That's because of the injection Aunt Eva gave me," Liam explained. Interesting theory," Owen said, then turned to his pet robot. "Let's note down all the medication. Looks like sleep was forcefully induced." Nathaniel and Liam chuckled. Owen grinned before letting out a relieved sigh. "You two are adorable. I wish I had a twin," Nathaniel mused, giving their noses a playful tug. The boys giggled. "All right. How do you feel now?" Nathaniel asked Liam. "I feel okay, but I'm hungry," Liam admitted. Nathaniel and Owen chuckled. "Can I go get something for him from the kitchen, Dad?" Owen offered eagerly. "Sure," Nathaniel agreed, thinking Owen needed something to keep him occupied. After Owen left, Liam met his father's gaze. "He really cares about you, don't take his concern lightly," Nathaniel gently admonished. "Yes, Dad," Liam replied with a small smile. "Good. I'll be right back. I need to check on Mason, Landon, and Esme," Nathaniel said as he stood. "Can I come?" Liam asked, his voice hoarse and weak. Nathaniel immediately took note of it. "No, son. It's best you stay in bed. I'll be right back. I won't take long," he reassured before stepping out. He then went to check on the triplets, gently opening the door and peering inside. He found Noria alone, rocking the babies in their cradles one by one. "I know you must be missing Big Mama, but don't worry. Auntie Noria to the rescue," she murmured softly. She glanced at one of the babies and added with a smirk, "I'm no Dr. Hart, though, so no singing. I'm not great at storytelling either. I wouldn't want to give you 3 cuties bad dreams." "Ah-ha-ha!" Nathaniel chuckled as he stepped inside. Startled, Noria sat up quickly, causing the babies to stir and fuss. She hurriedly resumed rocking them, her hands moving in a calming rhythm. Nathaniel held up one hand with the other tucked into his trouser pocket. "Sorry, just checking in. Do you need anything? A break, maybe? I'm no Big Mama either," he teased. Noria giggled. "They're pretty accepting, so they don't seem to mind too much," she said, playing along. "Good, because I doubt any of us could match up," he agreed. Her warm smile slowly faded. "How's Sheriff Logan?" she asked, concern lacing her voice. "The surgery was successful. We'll know more by morning," he replied. Noria nodded. "I can stay over to watch the kids, just in case," she offered. "It's okay, we've got it covered. You need a break too," Nathaniel said. "Thank you, sir," Noria said with a grateful nod. "No, Noria, thank you," Nathaniel said, his voice softer. The younger woman nodded with a smile. Nathaniel stepped forward and took over rocking the babies, but as soon as they saw him, their eyes locked onto him in unison. A slow smile spread across his face. I see I've made quite an impression," he mused as the babies continued staring at him. He chuckled. "Maybe I don't have to be Big Mama after all." Noria, watching from the doorway, smiled before quietly slipping out of the room. Later, when Arya came upstairs, she didn't find the triplets in their room. Frowning, she quickly made her way to Liam and Owen's room, only to discover they weren't there either. Pausing in the hallway, she listened carefully and soon picked up soft voices coming from the bedroom she shared with Nathaniel. A smile spread across her lips as she headed toward the sound. When she entered, she found them all huddled on the floor inside a makeshift fort of blankets. She could hear whispers and the sound of the babies cooing and gurgling. "Who goes there?" Owen's pet robot zoomed out, its eyes glowing red. Arya burst into laughter, shaking her head. "I come in peace," she said between giggles. Outside, Andrew stood watch alongside Adam and the other guards, waiting for Jake's team to return. When the familiar jeep finally pulled up at the ranch entrance, Andrew strode forward, his focus fixed on one thing, confirmation that justice had been served, Anton parked the vehicle near the front porch of the main building and stepped out. One look at the men, their clothes stained with blood, told Andrew everything he needed to know. No words were necessary. Jake and Charles approached. "It's done," Charles said. Jake gave a confirming nod. "How's Sheriff Logan?" Jake asked, his tone tense. "We'll know for sure by morning," Adam replied solemnly. Upstairs, Arya and Nathaniel collapsed onto the bed after finally getting the children to sleep. Arya giggled when she noticed Nathaniel smiling to himself. "You enjoyed that, didn't you?" she asked in a hushed tone. He nodded, offering her a gentle smile. "I do. Even though Esme, Landon, and Mason are so little, they still recognize me. I love the way their faces light up when they see me and how they keep their eyes on me the whole time I'm there. It's incredible," he murmured, almost to himself. "I love watching you with them too." "With us," Arya said. Nathaniel glanced at her from the corner of his eye. "I'm not going anywhere, baby," he whispered, his voice low and warm. Leaning in, he pressed a gentle kiss to her lips. A notification chimed from Nathaniel's phone. He exhaled as he pulled away from Arya, reaching for it on the nightstand. Arya moved closer, pressing her face against his chest as she wrapped her arms around him. Nathaniel absent-mindedly ran his fingers through her hair while unlocking his phone with the other hand. Seeing the message was from Andrew, he gave a small nod to himself. His men had returned. Justice had been served. He let out a quiet sigh of relief. He couldn't have asked for a better way to end the night. Now, all he could do was pray that Logan survived. Setting the phone aside, he slid lower onto the bed, careful not to disturb Arya's hold on him. Her soft, even breathing reached his ears, and he smiled. She had fallen asleep, clinging to him like a baby monkey. He chuckled quietly, pressing a kiss to her hair before shutting his eyes. Soon, he drifted off to sleep as well. About 3 hours later, Arya woke up. She wasn't quite sure what had roused her, but her aunt immediately came to mind. As she slowly regained awareness, she registered her position. She was lying directly on top of Nathaniel. A small smile touched her lips as she carefully disengaged from him, gazing down at his face with affection. Gently, she pulled open his pajama shirt to check the incision on his chest. The visible stitch scars were a humbling reminder of everything they had endured. Her heart clenched with emotion as she lowered her face, pressing a kiss to the side of the scar, then another and another. Nathaniel groaned, his voice thick with sleep as he mumbled, "You know, I'm not the only one you're waking up, right?" Arya giggled and leaned up to kiss his lips. She could still catch the faint scent of the minty mouthwash he always used before brushing his teeth at night. "Are you up for a dose of sleeping bliss?" she whispered. Nathaniel's hand shot to the nape of her neck, pulling her down as he flipped her underneath him, making her giggle. "I dare you to say that again," he warned. Arya lifted her head from the pillow and caught his lips in hers. The fervent, consuming kiss sent a shudder through Nathaniel, his body tensing instantly. "Man, you're in trouble now," he growled against her lips. Then, gripping her left thigh, he lifted her leg, parting her for him. The laughter faded as he deepened the kiss. "Nathan," she breathed. "My love," he answered in a guttural rasp. About an hour later, when Arya thought Nathaniel had fallen asleep, she carefully disentangled herself from his arms. She padded into the shower to clean up, then slipped into a pair of wool joggers before heading toward the door. "And where might you be off to, wife?" Nathaniel's deep voice rumbled through the room. Arya giggled as she turned to face him. "Aunt Helena's room," she said with a smile. "All right, next time just wake me, babe. I don't like waking up to your side of the bed empty," he murmured. She returned to the bedside, holding his gaze as she leaned in to kiss him. "I'll be right back. I just want to check on her," she whispered against his lips. He nodded. As she drew back, she murmured, "I love you." Nathaniel chuckled. "I believe I love you way more, my Ariana," he replied in a husky tone. Arya kissed him again, and then a second time. By the third, he smirked and said, "You still want to go see your aunt, don't you?" Arya broke into laughter and dashed toward the door. Glancing back, she found him watching her with a smoldering gaze. She blew him a kiss and he grinned. Arya hurried down the hallway to the door adjacent to the triplets' room, and slowly pushed it open, peering inside. Her heart clenched at the sight of her aunt kneeling by the bed, hands clasped together in silent prayer. Without hesitation, Arya crossed the room and knelt beside her. Though her aunt wasn't praying aloud, Arya could easily guess what was on her mind. She joined her, bowing her head and silently praying for Sheriff Logan. After a brief moment, her aunt opened her eyes and cast Arya a sidelong glance. Arya smiled warmly and wrapped her arms around her. "I'm sorry, Auntie," she whispered, exhaling softly. "You should be resting," her aunt gently admonished. "I just wanted to check on you," Arya replied, pulling back slightly. The older woman sighed and shifted, sitting down on the area rug with her back against the side of the bed. Arya followed suit, settling beside her. "I couldn't sleep," her aunt admitted. "I figured my time was better spent praying." Arya took her hand, cradling it between her own. "Why didn't you ever tell me about him, Auntie?" she asked softly. "What was there to say?" Her aunt responded with a sad smile. "I never thought we were meant to be. Something always got in the way, pulling us apart. I couldn't wait around, pining for him. He was a married man, after all." Her voice was quiet, thick with emotion. "He cared about you too, Auntie. That's why I don't understand how he let you slip away," Arya said, searching her aunt's face. "Like I said," the older woman repeated with another wistful smile. "Maybe we were just never meant to be. I don't know what happened to make you believe that, but I think this time is different. You'll see," Arya said, nudging her gently. Her aunt chuckled softly. "Even if life pulls us apart again, I'll still be happy knowing he's breathing the same air as me, still here on this earth." "This time will be different, Auntie. Remember, he went through Nathan's ridiculous Magic Mike ordeal just to have a date with you. And you kissed him in front of everyone?" Arya teased. Her aunt shook her head, amusement flickering across her face. "Well, I did a lot more than just kiss him," she admitted. Arya gasped dramatically. "Oh my God, Aunt Helena!" she said in mock horror. "Young lady, wait till Nathan finds out. You'll be grounded until you're 100 at least." Her aunt burst into laughter despite herself, and Arya giggled along with her. "Oh my God, wait till I tell Anita," Arya teased. "I forbid you to tell her Ariana Everly," her aunt exclaimed in horror, making Arya dissolve into a fit of giggles. As if summoned by the mere mention of her name, Anita's voice rang out from the doorway. "Tell me what?" she asked. Miss Everly gasped, while Arya, shaking with laughter, tumbled over as she attempted to speak, only for her aunt to clamp both hands over her mouth. "Does anyone actually sleep in this house?" Miss Everly said in exasperation. Anita grinned mischievously. "And to think I was worried about you. Aunt Helena, fess up. What did you do?" she asked, drawing out her words in a slow, deliberate Jamaican lilt. Miss Everly shook with laughter. Arya, still struggling in her grasp, made a choking sound and rasped, "I can't breathe." Her aunt finally released her, but the moment Arya tried to scramble away, intent on spilling the details of what had happened between her aunt and Sheriff Logan at the bachelorette party, Miss Everly caught her by the ankle and dragged her back, covering her mouth again. Anita lunged forward in an attempt to rescue Arya, but before she could, the sound of someone clearing their throat made all three women pause. Turning toward the doorway, they found Nathaniel standing there, frowning at the chaotic scene before him. The room fell silent for a beat, before the three of them collapsed into a fit of giggles. Still frowning, Nathaniel retreated, shaking his head with a small smile as he returned to the room. He had heard the sounds of scuffling and had come to investigate. What he hadn't expected was to find his wife seemingly being choked. He wondered what that was about, but was relieved that Anita and Arya had managed to lift the older woman's spirits, even if it was 4 in the morning. "Okay, fine. Tell her. I know you will anyway, Tattletale," Nathaniel heard Arya's aunt say. Anita responded, "She's working on your psyche, girl. Spill!" Arya's uncontrollable giggles made Nathaniel chuckle. Much later, when he came to check on the three of them, they were out cold, huddled together on the bed. He quietly closed the door and went looking for Noria and Bella to help with the kids. But as he reached the top of the stairs, he saw the two already approaching with Anna, Isla, and Dawn in tow. Nathaniel let out a sigh of relief. Shortly after, Evangeline arrived to check on Liam and administer his medication before heading off to give Tristan his. Nathaniel went to grab a cup of coffee before heading out to the infirmary. When he arrived, most of his men were already there. A series of "Good morning, boss," rang out as he joined them. His gaze immediately locked onto Andrew. "Please tell me he's alive," Nathaniel asked, tension in his voice. "He's alive, boss. Woke up briefly earlier. Rowan is with him along with Yen and Juliet," Andrew supplied. Nathaniel let out a sigh of relief. "Thank God," he muttered. His heart would have broken for Arya's aunt if the older man had died on her now. Jake offered Nathaniel a cup of coffee. "I just had one, thanks," he declined. "It's decaf," Jake responded. Nathaniel arched an eyebrow. "Since when do you drink decaf?" he asked, amused. "Since Eva got on my case about how unhealthy my coffee habits are," Jake quipped, making the men chuckle. After a brief moment of light banter, Aidan asked, "How's Miss Everly holding up, boss?" "She's fine. Anita and Arya aren't giving her a moment to be sad," Nathaniel replied, drawing smiles from the men. "Saw her trying to choke Arya earlier," he added. The men erupted into laughter. "I'm sure she'd love to know he woke up, and the first thing he said was her name," Adam supplied. Nathaniel nodded with a small smile. "Let's give them a few more minutes before we wake them," he said. Andrew chuckled. Ethan and Alex joined them about 30 minutes later. Nathaniel caught Ethan's anxious gaze and gave him a subtle nod, signaling that the older man was still alive. Ethan visibly exhaled in relief. Around 10 a.m., Andrew spotted Dr. Hawthorne approaching the infirmary with his wife, along with Anita and Miss Everly. Though the three tried to appear calm, their agitation was evident in their expressions. "Good morning, Andrew, Jake, Charles," Arya greeted Nathaniel's men one by one. Miss Everly gave a tired wave, her eyes clouded with fear. Aidan stepped forward and pulled her into a brief but firm hug. As he drew back, he said, "He's fine. No need for the long face." Miss Everly gave him a scrutinizing look before shifting her gaze to Andrew, who stepped forward and nodded in confirmation. Arya and Anita moved in closer, wrapping their arms around her from behind in silent support. Jake felt his chest tighten as Miss Everly nodded in acceptance, tears spilling freely down her cheeks. If it were possible to send those damn Blackwoods to hell all over again, he would do it without hesitation. "Thank you," Miss Everly said, looking from one man to another as if she could sense the extent of their efforts beyond what she could see. "Arya is so lucky to have found a family like this." "You're part of this family too, Miss Everly, and no one hurts our family," Lewis interjected. The older woman broke down completely, and the men instinctively gathered around her in a group hug before stepping aside to let her, Arya, and Anita enter the room. When Miss Everly hesitated at the doorway, Arya stepped forward, gently leading her inside. Sheriff Logan looked even worse than before. His bruises had darkened to deep shades of blue and black, but the steady sound of his heartbeat on the monitor was all Arya needed to hear. "Good morning, boss. Miss Everly, Miss Reynolds," Yen greeted as Rowan and Juliet joined in. Anita scoffed at Yen's formal greeting, and the other woman chuckled as Rowan began giving his report on Logan. He explained that the sheriff had briefly regained consciousness earlier, and from their preliminary evaluation, appeared stable. He handed Arya the medical report. Miss Everly made her way to the other side of the bed, pulling a chair closer before slowly reaching for Logan's hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. She watched as his eyelids fluttered open, his gaze locking onto hers. "Patrick," Miss Everly called softly, leaning in. His eyes flickered slightly as he searched her face. "You've been crying," he murmured, his voice low and hoarse. She had to lean closer to hear him properly. She smiled faintly and gently framed the side of his face. "I was worried," she admitted. "But then it's just like you to do this, huh?" she whispered. "We wasted time," he rasped. It took her a moment to process his words, her heart skipping a beat. "Marry me," he said. "Melody," Miss Everly repeated, not quite grasping his raspy words. "Marry me, Helena," he said again, this time with more clarity. Miss Everly froze, so did everyone else in the room. Arya instinctively exchanged a glance with Anita, gaping. Anita stared back, mimicking the gesture for a moment, before both turned their attention toward Arya's aunt and the bed. Arya slowly pressed the report Yen had handed her against her chest, her vision blurring with unshed tears as she watched her aunt sink back into the chair, looking stunned. Ariana just had triplets, Anita is pregnant, and then there is Owen and Liam. I can't stay here, Patrick, she said, shaking her head. They need me in New York, she added in a strained whisper. Auntie, Aria called out in disbelief. Her aunt was hesitating to accept a marriage proposal from the man she had wanted all her life. Because of her. Auntie, don't you dare, she added. The older woman ignored her. Don't leave me again, Helena, Logan pleaded, his grip firm against hers, refusing to let go. Aria watched as her aunt turned to her with a dazed expression, her gaze shifting from Aria to Anita and back again. Aria stepped closer to the foot of the bed, ready to stop the nonsense, just as Anita moved to stand behind Miss Everly. Sheriff Logan, Anita called gently, drawing the older man's attention. Would you consider coming back with us to New York? Her voice was soft and inviting. At least until you're back on your feet, Aria added, repositioning herself slightly so he could see her face. She thought Anita's suggestion was brilliant. At the very least, it would give them time to process everything that had happened and find a way to move forward. She and Anita watched as the older man turned his gaze back towards her aunt, his eyes searching her face for reassurance. If it wouldn't be a burden, then yes, of course I will, he said in a low, husky tone. He hesitated before continuing, his voice laced with uncertainty. Can I get an answer at least? I know this probably isn't the best time, place, or way. His eyes flickered over Helena's features filled with quiet desperation. Auntie, Aria and Anita urged softly, pulling Helena from her thoughts. She looked at Anita, then at Aria. They both nodded in encouragement, and then she finally settled her gaze on Logan. Rising from the chair, she cupped his jaw with gentle hands and pressed a kiss to his lips. Dear God, Helena, Sheriff Logan groaned, his voice thick with emotion. Relief was quite evident, knowing the kiss was a positive response to his proposal. Anita and Aria felt tears welling in their eyes. Yes, Patrick, I will marry you, Helena whispered. Sheriff Logan trembled, overcome with tears. Shh, it's okay, my love. We still have time, she murmured reassuringly. Aria and Anita began crying quietly, their emotions overwhelming them. Anita reached for Aria's hand, and Aria gently squeezed it in return. Yen and Juliet, standing nearby, also had tears in their eyes. Rowan lowered his gaze, his chest tightening with unspoken emotions, silently praying he wouldn't have to wait as long as Logan had before finding his own happiness. Meanwhile, Nathaniel, Alex, and Ethan, who were inside Ian's room, listening to the voices from the living room that had been turned into a makeshift operating area for Logan, smiled at the news of Miss Everly's engagement to Sheriff Logan. It's about damn time, Ian muttered in a gruff voice before looking away. Nathaniel, Alex, and Ethan exchanged glances before turning their attention back to Ian. Ethan could see the anguish etched into Ian's face, the silent wish that his own story had ended differently. But then Ethan reminded himself that Sheriff Logan had never been a bastard to Aria's aunt, and maybe that meant he truly deserved this happy ending. Ethan, Alex, and Nathaniel had come to see Ian, not just to check on his condition, but also to tell him about Diana and Timothy. Ian still had no idea why Sheriff Logan was in the Everly Ranch infirmary, only that he was injured. Ethan suspected Ian had assumed it was in the line of duty, and they hadn't yet had the chance to tell him the truth, knowing it would mean revealing who was responsible. There's something you need to know, Mr. Blackwood, Nathaniel began. Ian gave a slow nod, taking a moment before directing his gaze back to them. The younger men didn't miss the sudden redness in his eyes. Sheriff Logan was attacked by your wife, Diana, and her son, Timothy, Nathaniel said, his voice weighted with emotion. Ian's breathing became shallow, his jaw tightening. They attacked Patrick, he repeated through gritted teeth, his eyes cold and unreadable. Yes, thank God he's alive, Nathaniel replied. He almost didn't make it, Ethan added. According to one of Nate's men, they intended to burn him alive in his car. He got out just in time before it caught fire. He has burns on his back, Alex supplied. A heavy silence filled the room. Ethan could see Ian seething, his fury barely restrained. I hope his deputies are after them now, Ian finally asked, his voice low and rough. My men got to them first, Nathaniel responded. Ian met his gaze and held it. Nathaniel could tell Ian had already pieced together exactly what had happened just by looking into his eyes. Ian gave a slow nod, inhaling deeply, as if exhaling the remnants of something that no longer held power over him. Then he settled back against the bed. Good, he said simply. Now my son is free, he murmured almost to himself before shutting his eyes. Ethan felt his chest tighten with emotion. If he didn't know any better, he might have believed Ian had orchestrated this outcome for his former family. But he also knew Ian wouldn't jeopardize his best friend's life, or would he? Ethan's brows furrowed in thought. Back in the living room of the cottage, after everyone had congratulated Sheriff Logan and Miss Everly, Sheriff Logan met Anita's gaze and said, "Could you tell Andrew to see me? And Stephen, Adam, Seth, I think they saved my life." His voice was low and gruff. Anita nodded and left. A few moments later, Andrew, Stephen, Adam, and Seth walked in. Aria, along with the other doctors and Miss Everly, stepped out to give them privacy. Once the door clicked shut, Logan's eyes moved from Stephen to Seth, then to Adam and Andrew. "Thank you for saving my life," he said. The men nodded in response. "You just focus on getting better. That's all we ask," Andrew replied. Sheriff Logan gave a small nod. "Have any of my deputies been informed about what happened? They need to track down Diana and Timothy. Those two are a threat," Logan said, his voice edged with anger. "We were hoping you'd do that yourself." "Contact your men," Andrew replied. "You know how strict we are about who gets access to this ranch." Sheriff Logan sighed, nodding in resignation. Andrew crouched so that his face was level with Logan's. Holding his gaze, he said, "As for Diana and Timothy, we got your message. I can assure you, you don't have to worry about them." Sheriff Logan gave him a searching look. "How many casualties am I dealing with now?" he asked, his voice tinged with apprehension. Andrew straightened up, grinning. "I promise you, Sheriff, my men acted purely in self-defense." Logan groaned. "Please tell me where this happened," he pressed. "Doug's old man's house?" Stephen supplied. Sheriff Logan's eyes widened in disbelief before his expression slowly shifted into a knowing smile. "Self-defense, you say?" he asked, grinning. The men chuckled. Meanwhile, at Justin's cottage, he had woken up earlier to freshen up before Tristan and Jaden stirred. He had gone to check on Sheriff Logan with Andrew, confirming the older man was still alive. After staying for a while, he returned home and found Dr. Hart at his cottage along with the kitchen staff, who had brought breakfast so Tristan could take his medication. Tristan was recounting his ordeal to Dr. Hart when Justin reached the stairs landing. He spotted Tristan on the bed as one of the kitchen staff removed the overbed table he had used to eat, while Dr. Hart prepared his injections. Jaden chuckled when Tristan said, "My dad obviously can't fight, so I had to tell Aunt Jaden to go help save him." He sighed with resignation. Justin chuckled as well and said, "Ouch," placing a hand over his chest, drawing everyone's attention as he strode over to the bed. "Come on, son, you can't say I can't fight in front of the ladies," he quipped, feigning hurt. Tristan covered his face, silently laughing. "It's not like it's a lie," Jaden teased. Justin frowned at her, making her look away as she giggled. "Trust me, I know basic fighting skills. I'm not totally useless," he said, pretending to be offended. Tristan continued to giggle. "Dad, don't lie," he managed to say. Seeing that Dr. Hart was about to administer Tristan's injection, Justin kept talking, exaggerating how he had been quite skilled at amateur ninjutsu when he was 6 years old. Jaden cleared her throat to keep from laughing. Justin noticed Dr. Hart exchange a subtle look with the kitchen staff. The woman quickly set down the overbed table and gently held Tristan's hand. As soon as she had him distracted, Dr. Hart deftly administered the injection. "Ouch!" Tristan cried softly, though there was little actual pain in his voice. "Sorry, dear," Dr. Hart said, handing him a lollipop. Tristan grinned as the kitchen staff set a small triangular slice of pie in front of him. Justin chuckled as Tristan began nodding his head, swaying as if grooving to music only he could hear, before taking his first bite. "Dad, this is Owen and Liam's mum's special pie," he announced. "Ah, I see you're a fan too," Justin replied. "Uh-huh." Tristan mumbled, happily chewing. Aunt Jaden, do you want some? He offered. Thank you, dearie. But I'm sure Aunt Mary has one with my name on it downstairs, she teased. Hey, what about me? Justin interjected, sounding offended. This is way too small for you, Dad, Tristan said with a grin. Justin smirked at his son's cheeky remark. His boy was being a smartass, but he loved that about him. He also loved how well Tristan got along with Jaden. A part of him hoped Jaden would give them a real chance, that she would stay and build a life with him. Would she want more children? The thought tightened something in his chest. After Tristan, Pamela never got pregnant again. She had been convinced the issue was with him. Justin had never dared to get tested. He had simply accepted it. Would that be a deal breaker for Jaden? He shook off the thought, refusing to let doubt creep in. They would be fine. He wouldn't let his past interfere with his future. He silently vowed that to himself. Turning his attention back to the bed, he noticed Dr. Hart skillfully using his playful exchange with Tristan to her advantage as she quickly administered the rest of Tristan's medication. However, he also saw her draw a blood sample, which made him frown with concern. She swiftly packed the medical waste, sealing it in a white polythene bag, then leaned forward to affectionately stroke Tristan's hair before attempting to rise. Jaden hurried forward to assist before Justin could even offer. Thank you, Jaden, Dr. Hart said with a warm smile. Jaden nodded in acknowledgement. As Dr. Hart moved to leave, Jaden followed, stepping ahead so she could lead the way down the stairs. Justin trailed after them, leaving Tristan with the kitchen staff. Justin didn't miss how protective Jaden was of Dr. Hart. He figured it was probably because she was Jake's wife. He smiled, appreciating the strong sense of loyalty between them. It reassured him, knowing that he and Tristan were, in a way, part of that circle now. Trailing behind them, he listened to Dr. Hart joke about the size of her belly and how she could no longer see her toes. Jaden smiled warmly at her, and Justin could tell she genuinely liked the young doctor. Once they reached the ground floor, Justin fell into step with Dr. Hart. He cast a glance up the stairs to ensure Tristan wasn't following and wouldn't overhear. Lowering his voice, he asked, I saw you take a blood sample. Why? Is something wrong? Did you notice anything? His tone was tight with worry and his eyes shifted anxiously. Dr. Hart responded in a calm, reassuring voice. It's nothing, I promise. Dr. Hawthorne instructed me to test for cancer markers, just a precaution, double-checking. Jaden, who had overheard, turned to study Justin's face, reading the fear etched into his features. I promise, Justin, it's just a routine check, Dr. Hart reaffirmed. Justin gave a jerky nod, then forced a smile before opening the door for her. He stepped aside, murmuring his thanks once more as she stepped outside. When he turned back, he found Jaden watching him. He exhaled, gesturing helplessly. Why would Arya want to double-check if she didn't notice something? He asked, his deep voice unsteady. Jaden stepped closer. She had been avoiding serious conversations with him ever since his confession the day before, that he had feelings for her. But that night, after Tristan had gone to bed, Justin had come to her. Without a word, he had lain beside her on the makeshift bed in the living room, pulling her into his arms just to hold her. Jaden had considered pretending to be asleep, but when he whispered, I'm willing to wait for as long as you need me to, baby, she had turned in his arms and pressed her lips to his. Somehow he always knew exactly what to say to unravel her, and truthfully, she didn't mind being unraveled in his arms. She crossed the room and wrapped her arms around him. Justin held her tightly, burying his face in the curve of her neck as his grip around her tightened. I'm sure they're just being cautious, which is a good thing. I know firsthand how good Dr. Hawthorne is at her job. Let's trust her to do what she does best, Jaden said. Justin nodded and let out a sigh. Jaden knew she should step back, but she lingered, wanting to keep him close just a little longer. As if sensing her thoughts, Justin murmured, We'll have more privacy in the bathroom. Without waiting for a response, he drew back, took her hand, and led her to the adjoining bathroom. Once the door shut, he pulled her back into his arms, pressing her against the door as he locked it. Tristan might, Jaden started, but Justin's lips found the slope of her neck, trailing soft kisses along her skin. The words caught in her throat. She parted her lips, breathing heavily as he did what he always did, seduced her with his touch. When he unbuttoned her shirt and reached for the waistband of her trousers, she didn't stop him. She couldn't. Instead, she took his hand and guided it back to her chest, her breathing unsteady. Justin claimed her lips then. She moaned into his mouth. By the time they emerged from the bathroom, Jayden felt warmth spread across her face and neck when she saw Mary sitting on the stair landing waiting for them. We were... Justin started, scrambling for an excuse, but Mary simply smiled and gestured upstairs. I think whatever Dr. Hart gave him knocked him out. He's asleep, she said. Oh, thank you, Justin replied. Jayden lowered her gaze, remaining silent. Once Mary left, Justin let out a breath and said, I'm sure she didn't have a clue. He laughed awkwardly. Jayden held his gaze, trying not to smile. Sure, she said in a slow drawl, then turned toward the stairs. Mary said he's sleeping, babe. What, are you going to watch him sleep? He teased, hoping she'd stay with him. Yup, Jayden replied without looking back. Come on, wouldn't you rather have breakfast with me? Justin tried again. Jayden glanced over her shoulder with a teasing smile. Shouldn't you be planning the carnival, babe? Oh, shoot, he exclaimed, suddenly remembering. He turned toward the exit. Liam is going to make Nate kill me, he muttered in dismay. Justin? Jayden called after him. He paused, looking back at her with wide eyes. Don't you dare leave this ranch, she warned. Yes, ma'am, Justin replied as he retrieved his phone. Jayden smiled to herself as she watched him walk to the sitting area. He stood there for a moment, scrolling through his phone, likely searching for a contact. Her gaze instinctively trailed down his body, taking in just how good he looked. Her eyes softened as she tugged the corner of her lower lip between her teeth, biting down gently. She could still feel the lingering sensation of their encounter in the bathroom, a warmth that hadn't yet faded. Glancing toward the stairs, she checked the time before heading up to check on Tristan. Finding him still fast asleep, she took the opportunity to change into a simple, loose-fitting spaghetti-strap dress before making her way back downstairs. Justin's voice carried softly in the background as he finalized the details for the snow-surfing carnival night. All right, that sounds about right. Send me the invoice and I'll take care of it today, he was saying as Jayden returned to the living room. She locked the front door, then walked back to where he was seated. Sure, all right, run it by me, he said, settling back onto the couch. Jayden moved to sit on the coffee table directly in front of him, deliberately meeting his gaze. Holding it steady, she leaned back on the table, bending her knees and resting her heels on the edge of the sturdy frame. Then, with a teasing smirk, she began slowly opening and closing her legs, feigning nonchalance as she fought back a giggle. Justin faltered mid-conversation. Oh, okay, sounds like you, got everything covered. Great. Oh God, yeah, I, need to go. Wait, can I call you back? He stammered before abruptly ending the call. Jayden arched her back as Justin gripped her thighs, parting them before dipping his head between them, his mouth finding her with unrestrained hunger. Justin? She moaned quietly. Meanwhile, on her way back to the main building, Evangeline made a detour to the infirmary, her boots crunching over the thick layer of snow as she braced against the biting cold. She had to drop off Tristan's blood sample with Nurse Paul for evaluation. Dr. Hawthorne had instructed her to initiate testing for cancer markers to ensure there were no signs of recurrence. As she approached the infirmary, she spotted Jake and his friends gathered in front of the cottage, their postures relaxed. The sight filled her with relief. If they weren't on edge, it likely meant Sheriff Logan was stable. Thank you, God, she murmured in quiet prayer, her breath visible in the crisp winter air. Jake turned at the sound of her approaching steps, his blue eyes warming as he took in the sight of her. His affectionate smile sent a flutter through her chest, and for a moment she forgot the cold entirely. He had a way of making her feel cherished without even trying. How's your ward round going? He teased. Evangeline chuckled. It's a great workout. Love it, Jake said, grinning. But as she reached him, he took note of her labored breathing, his brows pulling together in concern. Are you sure all this walking isn't too much for you? He asked, attempting to keep his worry light-hearted. I'm fine, just feeling heavier these days, she joked, exhaling softly. Then you need to sit down, Jake insisted. No, I need to get this blood sample to Paul, she countered, determined. Jake glanced over his shoulder and called out, Someone get Paul out here. On it, boss, a voice responded from behind him. Evangeline sighed, shaking her head. I'm fine, Jake, she reassured him. You still need to sit down, he replied firmly. Moments later, Nurse Paul stepped outside, rubbing his gloved hands together against the cold. Good morning, Paul, Evangeline greeted, offering him the sample as Jake stepped back to give them space. Good morning, Dr. Hart, Paul replied, taking the vial carefully. Please run a full panel including tumor markers and circulating DNA analysis. Dr. Hawthorne wants to rule out any signs of Tristan's tumor returning. Paul nodded in acknowledgement. I'll get it processed right away. Thank you, she said, unconsciously shifting her hand to the small of her back, trying to ease the strain of her growing belly. Jake noticed the gesture, and his concern deepened. He glanced toward the infirmary, debating whether to call Dr. Sterling, but then Dr. Juliet stepped outside with Yen. He nearly asked them to check on Evangeline, but decided he'd rather go straight to Dr. Hawthorne later. Let me walk you back to the house, he said, placing a warm, steady hand at the small of her back. He guided her gently away from the infirmary, his touch offering both support and comfort. As they walked, their breath mingling in the frigid air, Jake rubbed small circles against her lower back through her thick coat, hoping to ease her discomfort. Have you congratulated Miss Everly yet? Jake asked as he continued massaging Evangeline's lower back. She frowned slightly, curious as to why she would need to congratulate Miss Everly. Still, the soothing motion of Jake's hands working out the tension in her muscles was far more distracting. The first thought that crossed her mind was that it had something to do with Sheriff Logan's successful surgery. Leaning into Jake, she closed her eyes, enjoying each step as his touch eased the dull ache in her back. I'm so relieved Sheriff Logan is okay. Anything else would have left Miss Everly heartbroken, she murmured. Yeah, and apparently the whole thing gave Logan a wake-up call because he finally proposed, Jake revealed. She said yes. Evangeline stopped in her tracks, her eyes widening as she looked up at him. Oh my God! He did what? She gasped in delight. Jake chuckled, nodding as he pulled her close again, and they resumed walking. Evangeline was still grinning as she slid an arm around his back. I'm so happy for her. I had a feeling there was something deeper between them. Oh. Evangeline beamed, her voice filled with excitement. Jake pressed a kiss to the top of her head. Yeah, we all are, he said with a soft smile. I'm sure the ladies will be planning a celebration for us later, she said, lifting her hands in a playful raise the roof dance. Jake chuckled and leaned in, brushing a kiss against her lips. Just the ladies, he murmured. Evangeline giggled, returning the kiss. We can have our own private celebration later, my love, she teased, tugging lightly at his lower lip. Jake let out a mix of a groan and a laugh. Good, I'll be looking forward to it, he said. Then, after a brief pause, he added, I want everyone to celebrate our wedding soon too, my love. Ready to pick a date? His deep voice sent a pleasant shiver through her. Evangeline felt emotion well up inside her, her eyes stinging slightly. She nodded. Just make sure it's before Eli gets here, he added. No, she said firmly, shaking her head. I am not marrying you with my belly this big, sir. Nope, not happening. Jake's laughter rumbled through him as he cupped her face, tilting her chin up for a lingering kiss. But this time it wasn't a fleeting kiss. It was slow, deep, and utterly consuming. Do you really think there will be a single year in the next 4 when you won't be carrying my baby, Evangeline Darfield? He murmured against her lips. That sounds like a threat, Evangeline said, feigning offense. So is that a no to the plan? He whispered. Evangeline tilted her head back, meeting his lips again, and kissed him slowly. Get a room! Someone shouted in the distance. They already did, idiot! Another voice chimed in. Jake and Evangeline broke into laughter. Upstairs in the main house, Owen pulled a marker from Liam's top drawer and helped him mark the day on the calendar, circling the next one, Carnival Day. When Liam opened his eyes and saw him, he smiled. Thanks, Owen. Owen climbed down from the bedside table and asked, "Do you want me to help you call a meeting?" Liam nodded and sat up. "Yeah, we need one last meeting. Nothing can go wrong tomorrow." Then a slow, mischievous grin spread across his face. "You promised me nobody would get hurt, right?" Owen asked, his brows drawn together in concern.